never gonna financially recover from this.
Just kidding. I'm back. Hi. We made it. We made it. Sorry. So if you missed it, we were streaming, and then I had to go very suddenly because I summoned into existence that the inspector would arrive, and sure enough, he did arrive. And guess what? We passed. Everything's good. So now they're just going to install the carpet in there, and then we move this studio into there. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do like an actual like moving stream where I'm going to like probably have Jacob over, and he's going to manage the stream with like kind of like an IRL stream, basically, where we do it maybe from a phone, or I don't know how you do IRL streams, frankly, but he's going to manage that, and then we'll move the studio over, and we'll get everything moved over. I think it'll be pretty cool. But we're in the home stretch. Everything's official now. Everything's like good to go. It's been an ordeal, man. It's been an ordeal because initially the people that finished this room in the basement, they did like, they finished it, but they didn't do all of the inspections. So they did the first 2 inspections, I think, and then they went and like just gave up, or I think they ran out of money because it was right around 2009, like the financial crisis. So I think they ran out of money and they never finished the inspections. So even though this room was done, the county didn't think that this room existed. So for this whole project, like we got this room officially inspected and cleared. We got the new room finished and installed and everything. And now that's fully permitted and cleared now. So in the span of like 3 months, maybe less than that, 2 months, I've added 2 bedrooms to this house. Just casually. How baller is that? Just casually adding 2 bedrooms to a house like it's nothing. That's how I roll, man. That's how I roll. I do want to say, because we ended the stream so suddenly, I did remember. I screenshotted the list of like recent events on the YouTube side of things before we departed so that I can still read the super chats and stuff that came in. Okay. So I'll wait a minute in case these guys come back, and then I'll read off the super chats I didn't get to before we continue. Okay. So I want you to know, if you send in a super chat that I didn't read, I have it here. I'll read them. I just want to give you guys a chance to get back in so you can see that stuff read. Okay. Okay. Fair play. Cool. We've got a handful of things we're going to talk about as we go through this. There's not a whole lot that happened in the last couple days, but of course the PlayStation Network collapse. There's other like little tidbits people have brought up. There's the Monster Hunter Wilds beta that has spawned some debate over performance, let's just say. As you can see, Nick Tech pointing out, you effed up optimization when you have to ask players to enable frame generation at the start screen, which we'll talk about that. I feel like we should touch on this again because now there's a dedicated article describing this, but we might not get to it. And I do want to actually talk about Fable. I do want to talk about Fable because this whole thing, Fable Legends, is one of those like forgotten projects that was going to be a big deal. Fable Legends. Yeah, look at this E3 2015 trailer. This game got shut down. This game doesn't exist, but this was like a huge endeavor for them that went nowhere. So we'll look at it. Because there's a lot.
Blake Rogers donated $20 through Super Chat. Hot button topic. Thoughts on it coming out about USAID being involved in gaming and being the ones to start Gamergate? I'm annoyed OT happened because all the grifter RS have all the ammo and it's all here.
I had not heard anything about USAID being involved in Gamergate specifically. So if that's been revealed, I've not seen that. But if that's true, I mean, that's insane. It does seem like there's been a lot of money flowing from there to various news outlets. I mean, even in other countries, which is kind of crazy that like a US government arm basically was funding news coverage in other like it's weird. The whole thing is weird. And bizarre and far above my pay grade, but I'm digging finding out about all the insane stuff they've been spending money on for years. Like the meme was always, you know, how do we spend so much money? And it's like, well, we've got to fund bat birth control like Dwight wanted in The Office. And you're like, no way that's real. And it ends up being real. That's been the story of this whole USAID thing, is just like, what were we spending money on? So I don't know. I've not seen the thing on them being involved in Gamergate. If that's true, that's insane. But you know, I'm sure I will hear about it and hear all about it soon enough. If that's been a thing that's come out like this morning or something like that, that would be crazy. But unfortunately, because I have not seen that, I don't have much to say on it. Okay. Is the podcast back this week? Yes, I believe so. Jor, I believe, is back home from Japan, so he should be able to join us on the stream. I was going to I messaged him last week. I was like, okay, good to do the podcast Wednesday. And he's like, so I'm actually traveling right now. And I was like, ooh, he streamed today. Okay. So yeah, we should be good to go back to normal on the podcast, or with the podcast. And so we should be good. Probably Wednesday we'll get back into the regular swing of things. It's wild. Kingdom Come runs on the RG Ally, dude, and it runs like pretty well. If you run it at 720p, it runs very stable. But if you run it at 1080p with like performance upscaling, whatever, it actually runs very, very well. Very playable. Like I said, I spent probably 30% of my playtime on the RG Ally. Works very well. How did you meet Jor in the first place? We've just both covered Assassin's Creed stuff for a long time, and we've kind of represented opposing sides of it at times, where like he's done a lot of coverage of AC Valhalla, and he of course has played that game a lot and covered it a lot. And I loathe that game, but we both have a lot of AC fans in our audiences. It's just we have different types of AC fans in our audience. So a lot of his fan base loves the newer era of AC. A lot of my fan base loves the older era of AC. And so it's always fun when we come together, because our audiences are two sides of the same coin. I mean, we all love Assassin's Creed. We grew up playing it, but it's always interesting to see the different perspectives that come out of it, you know? Okay, we've got some people back in here. Let me catch up on these super chats that came in before we had to suddenly end the stream. Just because I want to give you guys the shout outs real quick before it's too late. I think there was only one or two that I didn't read off before we departed. Storm Mage for the 5. Do you think GTA 6 is worth getting a PS5 Pro for? I've already seen the PS5, but wonder, or I already have the PS5, but wonder about upgrading. What should the average gamer do? What you playing on? I mean, I expect to be playing on probably like PlayStation. That would be my guess, because they've come out. I have the article. They've come out and talked a little bit about the PC strategy, but we'll read this in a second. But I do think while the PS5 Pro will probably run it better, I'm guessing it'll be a resolution bump. Former devs at Rockstar and some people way, way smarter than me who understand a lot more of the tech behind like how these games actually operate, they've come forward and said that the primary bottleneck in these Rockstar games tends to be the CPU. And so unless the PS5 Pro received some crazy CPU overhaul, it's unlikely that it would magically be able to play it at, 60 frames. It's just not likely, because if the simulation and all that stuff is running and maxed out on the current CPU on the PS5 to the point where it can only really achieve 30 frames, the 10-15% upgrade the PS5 Pro got is probably not going to get there. It's probably not going to get there. Every third word cuts out. Try refreshing, because on my end it's all smooth. Audio's clipping. It might be one of the YouTube things. YouTube's done this to us before. Let me check on Restream. Yeah, on Restream, it's working just fine for me. Try refreshing. Do. Yeah. Okay. Normal here, refreshed, it's better. Yeah, refreshing worked. It's YouTube, refreshed indeed. Okay. Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Anyway. What was I saying? Yeah, if the CPU is the problem, the PS5's 10-15% increase in speed will not magically fix it. It just won't. So I just think that I think it's probably wishful thinking to assume that the PS5 Pro will magically run it at 60. I just don't expect that to happen. Maybe it surprises us, but Rockstar has never really been that concerned with the 60 FPS target as like a must-have. But we'll see. We'll see. Do you use Ally or Ally X? I have the Ally. I bought it before the X came out, and now I feel like I can't justify upgrading to the X. My problem is I have so many gadgets. I don't want to upgrade if I don't have to, because then I just end up with extra electronics that I don't need. And I can't really sell things myself through Facebook Marketplace. Otherwise, people get weird. So what I've done before is I have a buddy who loves Facebook Marketplace, and I've had electronics and laptops and stuff I've needed to sell before. And I give them to him, and then I say, you sell it, and you keep 10-20%, whatever you get for it, you can keep as your commission. But you just sell it for me through Facebook Marketplace, because he loves like the bartering and the whole process. I hate it. I can't stand it, but he loves it. So I've done that before. We've done giveaways before. I remember I had a bunch of, I don't know, is Luke in here? We had a bunch of like collector's editions for a bunch of various games and statues and stuff that I just didn't need anymore. I didn't have room in my old studio in the apartment I was living at. Just didn't have room. And so I was like, I got to give it away. And so one of our mods and viewers was like, hey, I'll take it. I'll pay for shipping if you send it to me. And so I was like, sure. So I packed up a big ass box and shipped it off to him. Bunch of collector's items. And so we've done it that way before. Have you finished KCD 2? Oh yeah, dude. I had the game on January 4th. So all the while people were like, I wonder what it's going to be like. I wonder how good it's going to be. I was like trying to play it cool. But for me, I was like, I already know. It's one of my favorite games I've played in a long time. I love KCD 2, but I couldn't talk about it. It was sweet, sweet agony. But here we are. We're okay now. But yeah, I think what I'm going to do before I go through it again is I think I'm going to wait for the hardcore update, and then I'm going to play through it with the hardcore update. Because one of my notes that I touched on in the review is that I think the game gets too easy towards the end. If you've been doing a lot of side content stuff, it gets too easy. How's the replayability? Oh, as an RPG, it's very, very good. My thing is I love the sim stuff. I love the hardcore stuff. And so I'm hoping to, I think I'll hold out and I'll play through it again with the hardcore update. Yeah. Man, they really gave the review copies early. Yeah, and I can say that there's been a lot of other companies that have taken notice and are trying to do the same thing because they saw the positive reception to it and they're like, oh, it signals a lot of confidence. People will pre-order if they see that we're sending review codes out super early because it shows we're really confident in what we've got. And, you know, in the case of KCD 2, I think they could do that because the game was done last year. Like they basically delayed it to get it out of the AC Shadows window, which I think was probably a smart move, but then AC Shadows gets delayed and then they move the date forward and then Shadows gets delayed again. So it ended up working out very well for them. But I do think that the game was basically done last fall or last like November. So they could do that. I do think we'll probably, before the year is out, see some examples where companies send review codes out really early, trying to signal confidence, but the game's not ready and it makes them look bad and the game's like busted and broken. And I think we'll probably see that too, where it's the executives thinking they're being really clever and they end up screwing it up even more, you know, because there's always one of those. Yep. Send me all your items and I'll sell them. Well, did you see the was it Jay's 2 cents? I bet if I just look on X directly, I could find it. Jay's 2 cents. Where is he? Is he not on X? Oh wait, maybe this is it. He did like, I think it was him. He did a giveaway. Yeah, here it is. Eric didn't wait long to scalp the card we signed in Tustin, maybe Tucson is what he meant. Micro Center today. So he met a fan. They gave away the 5090 and signed it, and he put in it, box signed by Jay's 2 cents, receipt in hand. And then he changed the listing to remove the mention of me signing the box. Because he was getting bullied. He won like this thing at a giveaway from a YouTuber, or I guess. Maybe he bought it. He might have bought it, because he says receipt. So he might have bought it, and then like Jay signed it, I guess. But either way, to take it and then just immediately flip around and try to scalp it and then mention that he signed it, it's like, bro, come on. Come on. Nissan 5, would you ever be willing to soft break an NDA to protect the audience from a predatory/bad game? I'm not sure what you mean by soft break. I don't know what that means. Maybe you could elaborate. But my stance before has been that if an NDA would prevent me from disclosing something about the game that could be important, I just won't sign the NDA. So like there was one time where a company had an NDA that was very, very restrictive and was like, we just don't want you to talk about, it was worded weird. It was like, we don't want you to talk or focus on bugs and technical issues. And I was like, well, if they're bad, I'm gonna talk about them. So we went back and like said, no, I'm not signing this. And they ended up sending us the game anyways without having to sign any NDA. And as I recall it, the game ended up working just fine. I think it was the PR people that tried to say it. But in the past, if there's been an NDA that would be too restrictive, we've just said, no, we're not going to sign it. So figure it out. So we've never really run into that. There's going to be like, there's always going to be some things that maybe you'd like to be able to say, like there's some instances where there's very valid restrictions or something, like say you're playing a KCD 2 and they have like a really crazy spoiler, or think of like you get the chance to review The Last of Us Part 2, or even The Last of Us Part 1. Let's say 2013, you're reviewing The Last of Us. And nobody knew that you'd have a sequence where you can play as Ellie. That nobody knew that before the game came out. And maybe Naughty Dog specifically asks you, and PlayStation specifically asks you, don't share that you play as Ellie. Don't show gameplay footage of it. Don't show it because that's a big surprise we want to save for people. That I think is a fair request. Now, if it just so happened that there were a bunch of bugs or there was a game-breaking bug or some horrible thing that like is significant within that section of the game, then it's like, okay, I feel like I should talk about it, but it's also super spoilery, you know, to bring it up and show the footage of it because it's in a section of the game where if you even see it, it spoils it. So how do we deal with this? And in those cases, it's usually hit or miss. It's usually case by case, but typically if there's a game breaking bug, we might reach out to the company or to the devs and be like, what is going on? Is this normal? Is there a fix for this? Can we get the fix? Can we see the fix? Can you send me footage of the game working in this area with the day one patch that we will eventually get? Like, we'll go back and forth. And if they show that it's fixed, I still usually mention it, which has upset some devs before in a review. If I'm like, they say they fixed this with the day one patch. I have not seen that patch though. I don't know. So I'm going to show it to you anyways. There's been some frustration where they're like, but we fixed it. And now people think that that bug is normal. I'm like, yeah, but there's also been other times where I've been told by studios that this will be fixed day one and it's not. If anything, it might be worse. So I'm just going to say it. If you give me a copy of the game and it's busted, you shouldn't be complaining when I tell people that it's busted. And if you have a day one patch that fixes it, give me the day one patch and let me see that you fixed it, you know? But I've been burned so many times by companies that say one thing and then end up just breaking it another way, you know? So anyway, all this to say, would I soft break an NDA? I don't know what soft break really means, but I would not break an NDA because it's a legally binding agreement. So I wouldn't break an NDA, but I wouldn't sign an NDA to begin with if it were going to prevent me from clearly disclosing things about the game. You know, if it was like, sign this NDA and don't talk about bugs, I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I'm not signing it then. And in my experience, the moment you give a little bit of pushback on that stuff, they cave immediately. They're like, oh yeah, sorry, okay. Yeah, NDA is not necessarily legally binding, but I wouldn't take that risk. Usually if it's coming from like a big corporation and they've got heavy duty lawyers, it's probably going to be pretty lock solid. And even if there's like a hole in it and there's some problem with it, it's going to cost you so much to fight it if they do come after you for breaking it that like just don't break it. So in my experience, just don't sign it if it's going to present a problem. Just don't sign it. Jimothy, 9 months. Thank you. Ooh, baby, 9 months. What's your guess for when Elder Scrolls 6 releases? And do you think there's any chance it's actually a really good game? I think it's probably like 2027 to 2028. I think it's a ways off, especially seeing that it took them a year to make Shattered Space. There's something within like BGS that makes them work at a snail's pace. So I just don't think that they're going to pump it out super fast. I think it's going to be a long and arduous journey. And then as far as a really good game, I mean, there's a very good chance that it launches next to The Witcher 4. And if I were a betting man and I had to put money on Witcher 4 being more impressive or Elder Scrolls 6, I would put money on Witcher 4. Especially because the second Elder Scrolls 6 is revealed, what is everybody going to be doing? Everybody will be looking for load screens. Everybody will be looking for bugs. Everybody will be looking for the dynamic quests. A settlement needs your help. Like everybody will be looking for the memes because it's funny. And, you know, the memes have a hint of truth in them, if not a lot of truth. So that's just going to be the story that they have to fight. Whereas The Witcher 4, I think, has a much more straightforward trajectory, maybe, where they just have to deliver a really polished game of the same level and quality as Phantom Liberty, the expansion. That's the most recent thing they did. And if they do that in the Witcher world, then we're set. You know. But we'll see. I mean, I like, some people wish the world were different than it is. And yes, you can say that, like, well, but you know, people give BGS crap for the load screens, but they don't give these other studios crap for this or for that. And you know, this other studio did it this way and they didn't face any blowback. It's like, okay, this is all whataboutism. I get it. Yes, some companies can get away with stuff that others can't. I totally agree. It's the same thing with Ubisoft, where Ubisoft can be like, you guys are giving us crap for this, or for having a piece of concept art that was clipped from this. Other games have done that. Why aren't you going after them? And it's like, because it's just different. Like right now, I know it's not fair, but that's just how it is. Okay, you're the butt of the joke. Everybody's looking at you with a fine tooth, looking at you with a magnifying glass, sifting through all the details with a fine tooth comb. Like, that's just, it is what it is. You can complain about it. We can be upset that the way, you know, the world is that way. But the world is that way. You got to deal with it. And I feel like a lot of the time with the BGS discussions, it eventually boils down to, this isn't fair. Why does BGS get held to the standard? And it's like, they just do. I think it's because the fans have been burnt enough that they've just had enough. So they hold them to a really high standard. And I don't think BGS is able to meet it most of the time. But a lot of it is also born out of their own, perhaps, arrogance. Their refusal to acknowledge actual criticism and critique. And you see it, I mean, whether it's game directors muting and blocking people on X that bring up problems they had with Starfield or Fallout 4 or whatever, Fallout 76, or if it's, you know, the hilarious Todd interviews where some people didn't like Starfield. Todd, what do you think of that? Yeah, I think about people who liked it and people who liked it less. And it's like, bro, you can't even say that people didn't like it. You can't even let the words leave your mouth. How do you fix a problem if you can't even say it? You can't, which is why you end up with the same thing happening over and over and over again. How do you right the ship? How do you steer away from the iceberg? I know it's a messy analogy because technically if the Titanic had rammed right into the iceberg, it would have been fine. It was the fact that it turned and tried to get away from the iceberg that it sank, but that's a separate issue. You get what I mean? How do you fix the route? How do you avoid the sinking if you can't even acknowledge there's a potential problem? Like, you just can't. Wait, what? Yeah, it's a whole thing. If the Titanic had rammed the iceberg head on, it only would have flooded one, maybe two watertight compartments, and the ship would have been fine. They would have towed it back to New York, and it would have been fine. It was the fact that they turned and scraped the iceberg along the side of the ship that gashed open multiple watertight compartments. That's why it sunk. So technically, turning away from the iceberg when they did caused it to sink. If they had just rammed it, would have been okay. Which is crazy to think about, but that's just what happens, man. That's what happens sometimes. Where am I? Does KCD2 still have the same lockpicking minigame as the first? Easily the worst lockpicking game in any game I've played. Yeah, it's very similar. It's very similar. I know some people don't like it. I get it. Download a mod. You can skip it if you want. I personally don't mind it, but I can understand why some people don't like it. What other ones did I see? Seth, thank you for that one. Luke doesn't want to stream from jail. No, I don't. Nacho, thank you for that one. Luke, I'm having a blast with KCD2, but I have concerns. I did a lot of side content before the wedding, and when I progressed the main story, I beat the first boss in 2 hits. Does the difficulty ramp up later, or I'm OP? There's a lot more challenging stuff after you go through, no spoilers, but after you go through what's coming, you will have a much higher ceiling. Because in that first area, there's a lot of, I mean, it's basically the tutorial area. Like, you're getting your feet under you. So it will ramp up a lot once you get to like Gutenberg and you do all that stuff. So don't freak out. Yeah, the mini game is much harder on controller. 1000%. Totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. Where was I? Okay, should we actually talk about a topic now? Probably. Did you see Asmongold rage quit after 5 hours? No. Is that real? That's funny. It's not like KCD2 is not for everybody, okay? Like, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm glad that we're starting to get over the hump of some people who are like, I don't personally like it, therefore it's garbage. No. There's some games that you just don't connect with. That's okay. You know, it's not the end of the world. I may not like, I don't know, rhythm games. Just not into them. They don't really do much for me. That doesn't mean rhythm games are bad. I may not like what's another weirdly niche game? I don't know. I may not like X weirdly niche game. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I didn't connect with it. And so if Asmon doesn't connect with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, that's okay. I hope he's not like, see, the game sucks, you know, like a DSP type monologue. But as long as he's like, it's just not for me, that's fine. Yeah, Valhalla. Yeah, Valhalla, I can point to things why I think compared to other open world games, it's not as good as those, or at least why in comparison to those I don't like it. But obviously there's thousands upon thousands of people that love Valhalla and played a lot of it and spent a lot of money in it. So there's a lot of people that disagree with me on Valhalla. But I think what I at least try to do in my videos and streams and stuff is if I feel a certain way about a game, I try to describe why I feel that way about the game. And doesn't mean that I'm trying to like outright say this is the only correct position to have. I'm just trying to explain why I feel the way that I do, you know? That's funny. Let's see. Yeah. Are you still doing the free roam podcast? Yeah, JP, we're doing it probably Wednesday. Jor has been traveling. He was just in Japan, so he wasn't able to do the show, but he's back now, so we should be good. Okay. Let's touch on this real quick. So, news over. Show of hands in the chat. How many of you guys suffered as a result of the PlayStation Network collapse that happened over the weekend? Did anybody else run into that? It was brutal, says Vinny. Yeah, if you are a PC gamer, Xbox gamer, Nintendo gamer, or maybe you just had stuff going on this weekend, you might not have heard, but basically there was a massive outage across the PlayStation Network that affected account management, gaming and social stuff, PlayStation Video, the PlayStation Store, PlayStation Direct, all of it. And all PlayStation would say was like, we're aware of issues that some users may be experiencing, and they refused to like go into any detail. It was down for hours, and then more hours, and then more hours. And eventually service got restored after about 20 hours, but there was no real announcement made or clarification given. They just went down. It was really, really weird that it went down with no real explanation. And it's not the first time this has happened. Back in October, you may recall that PSN went offline for a while. It wasn't as long. I believe it was like 3-4 hours, but it was during peak gaming hours and that went down. So it's happened before, but you may not recall, because this requires you to be an OG. There is something that happened back in 2011 where the PlayStation Network was down for 24 days. 24 days. Now this, of course, was back in the day when digital copies were nowhere near as common. You know, most people still played physically, of course. 2011, this is still PS3 era. But this was primarily due to an external intrusion, as you can see described through the Wikipedia article. But basically what happened was that the personal data for 77.1 million PlayStation Network accounts was exposed, and stolen. And it was a bit of a disaster. Cost them millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And service was down for over 3 weeks. So this could have been much worse. Really could have been. But the problem with it, I mean, this kind of reminded everybody why the online only future is so maybe not ideal, because there were many people, and you saw them on X. Some of you guys experienced it right here, yourselves, where service dropped. You could not install a new game. You could not download a game. You could not play a game online. So there were a lot of people that wanted to play the Monster Hunter Wilds beta that could not because service dropped. Now, the Monster Hunter crew, they apparently have extended I think the second week test, like next weekend or something. They've extended one of them by 24 hours. So they've added an extra day to the test for the people that missed it, which is awesome. I think that's great. But when everything's connected to the PSN, when the PSN goes down, nothing works. Nothing. There were some people that didn't even have their console selected as their like primary PlayStation, which if you don't do that, it means you can't play games offline because it doesn't like download the certificates saying that you own it. Meaning that like if you're playing a single player game that is offline only, doesn't connect to the internet, you still couldn't play over the weekend while this was down because you hadn't pressed that button in the settings to make it your primary PlayStation so that it can play offline. It's just insane how many little bitty things can break when one thing goes down. Now, 20 hours is not the end of the world, but it still is a very disruptive shutdown with basically no explanation given as of the time of this stream right now. Maybe they say something in the next day or two and they announce what exactly happened, but we just don't know. I'm hoping it's not some sort of data breach like it was in 2011, but Sony has had a history of less than stellar security. But to be clear, like these types of attacks happen all the time, whether it was just a really coordinated attack on their servers that shut everything down and overloaded it, if it was some data breach and so they shut everything down to protect user data while they put the defenses back up. You never know. But there's been a lot of different things that have happened before. So for example, this was posted by Tom Warren, the senior editor over at The Verge, who said, without Sony commenting, nobody knows why PSN has been down for 19 hours and counting. But Microsoft did block a, quote, staggering DDoS attack on Azure Xbox infrastructure over Christmas. So it's possible Sony is dealing with something similar. And this was something that they put out where they said a staggering attack on gaming resources reached 100 to 125 PPS in multiple waves. This attack, whose signatures linked to the Typhon botnet, was fully mitigated by Azure's defenses. Something you probably didn't even you didn't even think about, didn't even hear about, nobody heard about it because the server infrastructure from Microsoft was able to resist it. But this is why, it reminds me of the old Steve Jobs saying. He said, technology is at its best when it's invisible. And I think here it's true. IT security is at its best when you don't hear about it, when it's just doing its job quietly in the background. That's when it's good. When you hear about it, it's usually because something went bad. It's usually because you didn't shut it down and all of your networks collapsed as a result, So there's always going to be some little hiccups. There's going to be some network infrastructure issues and stuff. But having your entire network go dead for almost an entire day worldwide is wild. And I don't understand how you could still be having these problems in 2025. I just don't get it. I understand the attacks on these systems are wildly complicated. Even just, let's Google that, Typhon botnet. FBI announces Chinese botnet disruption exposes Flax Typhon hacker group's true identity at Aspen Cyber Summit. This is from September. The botnet, which was operated by Chinese government-sponsored hacker group known as Flax Typhoon, targeted internet-connected devices such as storage devices, cameras, and video recorders to compromise victims' systems and steal their confidential data. Jeez, dude. Ultimately, as a part of this operation, we were able to identify thousands of infected devices, and then, with court authorization, issued commands to remove the malware from them, prying them from China's grip. Like, they go and they compromise devices, millions of devices around the world, and then they use those to do coordinated attacks on these different servers and things. It's extremely complicated and way, way, way above my pay grade, to be perfectly clear. But this is the world we live in, folks. And PlayStation, I think, should have systems in place to protect against it so that, you know what? I'd go so far as to say, if connectivity shuts down in Europe for 20 hours, but it's up in the rest of the world, at least then I can understand, like, okay, it's isolated. Okay. But like the defense systems are working, the drawbridge has been raised, the moat filled, they're defending themselves while they figure it out. And they wait for support, you know, to wait for reinforcements, whatever. But to have the entire global network shut down is so insane to me. And to say basically nothing about it makes me think that it probably was some sort of attack or attempted data breach that maybe was successful, maybe wasn't. But either way, if I were you, I'd get in there. I would change your passwords. I would change your credit card info just to be safe. Just to be safe. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Too much KCD? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Jack. You know, I was thinking of that when, yeah, no spoilers, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I did a sponsorship with these guys like a year or two ago. I'm not currently sponsored with them, okay? But this is just a service I use every day. So I'm not getting paid to tell you this, but it's something I do honestly recommend. It's privacy, okay? It's just privacy.com. I use these guys. You just like connect your credit card or bank account, whatever, to them. And then it generates a unique credit card number, expiration date, everything for each service you use. So PlayStation, I have, has its own card. Steam, its own card. Xbox, its own card. Spotify, its own card. So they each have their own numbers. So whenever there's a data breach or something weird like this, you can shut it down. Or you can set a spending limit where it's like, hey, my PSN account is like $15 a month. And you limit it to $15 a month so they can't charge it for more if your data gets compromised. It sounds like iOS does it too. I think Chrome does it with the virtual cards if you do it that way. Either way, do something like that. Don't just put like your debit card connected to one of these accounts. If you've got that set up right now, take the 10 minutes. I beg of you, do something like this with the virtual cards, iOS's thing, or privacy, whatever it is. You'll be very thankful because it just takes your data getting compromised one time for them to like do a massive attack on you. My parents, I remember years ago, had their identities stolen and their bank account information stolen. And over the course of 12 hours, they had hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled in and then back out of their account as part of like a money laundering thing to scrub the money because some criminal organization got their bank account numbers, wire info, whatever it was, their ACH routing numbers, everything, and just routed money through a bajillion different accounts super quickly in the span of a few hours and did that to like wash the money as they cleared it out. But my parents went in, they're like, our checking account is like popping up with all these alerts. I think it was Bank of America. They had this happen to like 2 different accounts of Bank of America. And they're like, yeah. So like, did you send a deposit of $283,000 and then withdraw it 3 minutes later? No. Oh, that's weird. Like, yeah, sure is weird. But this type of thing happens. So just be careful, reset your passwords, do it that way. You'll be thankful because it just takes one oopsie to wreck you. That being said, PlayStation, figure out your crap. 20 hours is crazy. They have, I believe, given 5 days of free PlayStation Network Plus, whatever their service is called. So they've tried to make amends a little bit by giving out free, a few days of free membership. Still, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And they better figure it out. Because if that's happened today, just out of the blue, wait till there's big events or other things and they've realized that this is a vulnerability, and you're going to see it happen again and again and again. Just for poops and giggles, man. You're going to see it all over the place. Yeah, identity theft is not a joke. Millions of families suffer every year, Jim. but unironically it is. So just take precautions. Okay. Take precautions. Be safe. Musical Harmony, thank you for the 2. Love you, man, and the amazing content. Thank you, my friend. Hope you're doing good. Mango Gaming, what am I most anticipated for? I mean, I would have said KCD 2. That came out and was amazing. So now I probably will say Monster Hunter Wilds. And when that comes out, I will probably shift and then say Expedition 33. And then when that comes out, I'll probably say Mafia. And then when that comes out, I'll probably say GTA 6. There's just so many good games that I'm just going to like shift steadily, you know, from hyperfixation to hyperfixation. Yeah. Rockstar got the whole industry on pause. GTA 6 still far away. And now other games won't even announce their release dates. This wait is painful. Yeah, it's going to come randomly. They're just going to post something on X one day and just be like, hey, new trailer tomorrow at 9 a.m. I swear that's what they're going to do. It's going to be something like really kind of anticlimactic. Everybody's trying to count the number of stars in the night sky and divide it by pi. It's like, bro, it's just going to happen one day. They're just going to be like, yeah, today, you know what? Today's a good day. You know what they probably honestly do? They probably have like a Poxitani Phil. They have like a groundhog that lives in the office. And he just pops his head up every couple days. And if he sees a shadow, they'd release a trailer or something. At this point, I think that that's probably what they're doing. And I can't blame them. It seems to work. They're doing just fine. More people are talking about GTA 6 than ever. But what are you going to do? In the same vein, Take-Two CEO has talked about GTA 6 not coming to PC, which is interesting. I believe this is the first time they've actually like talked about it, actually addressed it. They say, of course, in this interview with IGN, Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick was asked about the game coming to the platform, PC, and the decision not to launch on what he calls an important part of the business. Quote, in the interview, Zelnick says, usually Take-Two's strategy has not been to release on all platforms at once. Instead, he says, it would start with a console or two before branching out. With GTA 6, that plan appears to be no different, as there is a focus on moving more PS5 and Xbox Series systems with the game's release. Quote, when you have a big title in the market, and we have many of them coming, historically that has sold consoles. Zelnick said, while also mentioning that it's not always the case to not release on all platforms at once. He pointed to Civ 7 as an example of a full multi-platform release that includes PC and Switch. Regarding PC launches, specifically, Zelnick says that the company knows how big the market is, I think is what they meant to say. According to the Take-Two boss, PC versions of the game can result in up to 40% of the game's total sales. It's not something that's lost on him. Quote, we have seen PC become a much more and more important part of what used to be a console business, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that trend continue. GTA 6 is currently scheduled for this fall. I mean, he's basically saying what we've heard 1,000 times over, but it's effectively that PC is huge. It represents a huge chunk of the market, and many, many people will buy it on PC. But some of the consistent things that have been said by Take-Two, okay, whether you agree or not, this is what they've said. They have brought up piracy as a chief concern. They don't want people pirating copies of GTA 6 day one. And piracy is not really anywhere near the same level of concern on console. I know technically you can like jailbreak a console and then play a pirated copy of it. I know technically that's possible, but 99.9% of console players are not going to do that. Like they just, the reason they're playing on console is because they don't have the technical know-how to do that type of thing. So, or they like the convenience, whatever else. So piracy is one concern that they've brought up time and time again. I know some people say piracy is not a huge issue. It doesn't move the needle that much, which very well could be true. I'm just telling you what they have said. Okay. That's number one. Number two is it's tough to optimize on PC. There's a lot more moving parts when it comes to PC compared to consoles. If you're developing a game for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, there's 3 sets of hardware you have to be concerned with. I guess with PS5, you have the PS5 Pro, but it's 4 pieces of hardware you're developing for. And then you optimize. Whereas on PC, there's a bajillion other things to consider and a lot more moving parts. So in the past with GTA 5, what they did is they released on the Xbox 360 and PS3. And then later they brought it to PS4 and Xbox One and of course PC, and rocked and rolled there, eventually bringing it to, every platform that they needed, but they took their time to get there. and you can't really argue with the results. And the other thing that he's not going to say in an interview because it sounds really cynical, maybe, it's to double dip. I mean, let's be real. It's to double dip. Let's just call a horse a horse. We all know that that's the real answer. The game's going to be so popular, it's so crazy, it's going to be everywhere that people are going to go out, buy PS5s for it. They're going to go and they're going to, buy the game at full price to play it at the same time as all their friends. And then they are going to enjoy it. 6 months, a year, most likely 18 months will go by. It'll launch on PC with all new graphic options. It'll be optimized for 6,000 series cards, and it's going to be crazy, crazy cool. And then every one of those mofos that bought it on PS5, bought it on Xbox Series X, that have a PC will buy it again and play it again, comment on how beautiful it is with a quadruple, extra, double, super cyan ray tracing. And then another year will go by. And you know what's going to happen? The PlayStation 6 will launch. And the Xbox bippity boopity, whatever they end up calling it, will launch. And people will buy a third copy. And then the Nintendo Switch 3 will come out. And it finally supports the game. And they're going to buy it on that platform as well. And this is just what they do. And you can't really argue with it because it's worked so well for them for years and years and years. I mean, you can't really argue with the results. But I mean, that's pretty clearly what they're going to do. So whenever you hear like one of these CEOs or executives being like, well, we're really concerned about the piracy issue, and we also really just want to make sure that we can optimize it to the fullest extent. It's like, okay, like I'm sure that's like part of the equation, but I think that's like 0.1% of the consideration. You could, if you wanted to, devote resources. You're a multi-billion-dollar company. You could devote resources and launch it on PC day one. You could. 1,000%. You're not, because you probably are going to sell more copies if you just hold it back for a year and a half. Take your time and do it that way. And you release it on PC as part of a big also update to GTA Online. So you bring in a bunch more people buying all the microtransactions. Like, let's just call it like it is, But it's always so funny when you hear the CEOs and stuff talk about it and they're like, well, we really want to focus on this and this. And it's like, we know what you're doing. We know. And honestly, it's okay. I get it. Okay, you got to make your money back. GTA 6 is reported to have cost, when it releases, it's estimated to have cost between $1 and $2 billion to make. It will be the most expensive video game ever produced, not counting marketing and stuff. It's going to take them a while to make their money back if they're doing it traditionally. So they're going to be aggressive with it, and they can. So long as the game is good, it's like, can you really blame them? So I love my PC ports, but I get why they're doing it. And you know what? If the PC port, when it eventually comes, is really polished and is really good, then I'll be a happy camper. But let's just call it like it is. I mean, this is this is not some benevolent move meant to focus on console players first and foremost. It's because they want to double dip. Let's not be stupid here. Oh, man. I'm one of those idiots that will buy it on PS5 and PC. I mean, I think a lot of people are that idiot. But that's the thing, is if the game is good, I'm fine with financially supporting it. That's the thing. I don't even know how many copies of The Witcher 3 because I want to vote with my wallet and I want to tell them I like this game. So I've bought it for friends. I've bought it for my siblings. Like I've bought that game many, many times on Switch, on all these platforms. I love it. And if the game is good, I'm okay with supporting it in that way. If the game sucks, I'm not going to buy it multiple times, of course. But that's why all of this is predicated on the game being good. And that's what they need to deliver on. All of this is a moot point if the game is bad. So we'll see. When do you think Sony and Microsoft will release modular consoles? fully modular, I don't think they'll ever do that, but they already kind of are doing it with the PS5 and series consoles with the expandable storage. So they're kind of doing it already. Kind of, sort of. Let's see, where was I? Okay. More Shadows deep dives announced. Oh, cool. Oh, cool.
Edgar Vasquez donated $10 through Super Chat.
Booyah.
I wait for PC ports, then I get disappointed when they're optimized like Fallout 76.
Yeah, fair point. That's why if they do take their time and it comes when it's ready, cool. PC ports are one of those things that's just, you have to be a capable team and you have to give it time. And if you can have a capable team and they have time to do it, you're good to go. But it's just going to be a matter of whether or not they get that. And like the Spider-Man 2 PC port was so weird because it's from a capable team, but it doesn't seem like they had time. It was weird because that PC port's been a wreck. And as I played more of it after we filmed the video, I was like, this is not great. Like, it's getting worse. Bugs and glitches, and the performance was terrible, and then stuttering and all sorts of weirdness. So I don't know, man. It's just, yeah, I hope they take their time and get it done right. Booyah, Fearless, thank you. Oh yeah, look at that.
Fearless Wolf donated £20 through Super Chat. Could be worse. GTA 6 could be pulling a full on Skyrim. Release, re-release, then re-re-release. GTA 6. Definitive Edition. GTA 6. Extra.
Oh man, why does it cut off? I don't want it to cut off. Can I fix that? Oh, maybe. Okay, I changed one setting. Maybe this fixes it. Maybe by increasing the length, maybe that fixes it. I don't know. I want to fix it so it reads the whole message. Anyway, GTA 6 Definitive Edition, GTA 6 Extra Definitive Edition, GTA 6, we swear this one's the last one edition by 2035. Maybe that's what they do. It's like that interview where Todd half jokingly, people are like, why do you keep re-releasing Skyrim? And he like half jokingly goes, because people keep buying it. But that's true. They wouldn't release it if people weren't buying it. You stop buying it one time and they're like, okay, people are done with it, moving on. But it's because people know. Like, people know. So if they keep buying it and if they buy multiple editions, they'll do multiple editions. I mean, they already did that kind of with like GTA 5. But then you see Red Dead, which pretty much got abandoned. It's the most successful abandoned game ever, you know? It's crazy. We swear this is the last one edition. I'd buy that one. I have a PS5 and PC. I'll only buy GTA 6 on console at launch if it's 60 FPS. Otherwise, I'm gonna wait. I'm too old to play games at 30. I think you may be waiting to buy it because I think it's really, really unlikely that it launches with a 60 FPS mode. I just, after seeing a lot of the inner workings and hearing some very smart people that are way smarter than me describe how it works, I'd be very surprised to see it. Okay, let's talk about Fable finally. I want to talk about this one. Hold on, let me pull up the original trailer. Fable. here. Wilfredo, thank you for the 5. I sometimes catch myself saying in my head, new segment when starting a new conversation with people, shake my head. I'm glad I'm having an influence on you. I'm glad. Speaking of, new segment. Okay, you ready? Okay. So one of the other big games that's coming allegedly this year is Fable. This one is really interesting because, of course, it represents a massive financial investment from Microsoft. And I mean, we've seen some trailers and it does seem like they've poured a lot of money into it. You don't get this level of graphical fidelity, animation polish and stuff without a big old credit card backing it, you know? But this isn't where I want to focus this segment on because we've talked about Fable. And there's not much new to talk about. Not that that's ever stopped us from talking about things before, but still, you get what I mean. Instead, today, I want to talk about what this game is replacing. Because it was not always supposed to be this game that rebooted the Fable franchise, which, of course, was very big back in the day. Rather, the game that was supposed to reboot this franchise was a game called Fable Legends. This might be a throwback if you've not seen these trailers in a long time. This is from E3 2015, okay? Same E3 where they announced like Fallout 4 for the first time. You remember everybody went crazy over it? Same one. And you can see the demo of the game is very, very different from what we have in this new version. So I wanted to do a little deep dive onto this because I never actually found out very clearly what happened to Fable Legends. Of course, it ended up being canceled and abandoned and walked away from, but they were pretty far along with it. And then it just disappeared. So I did a lot of really hard Googling and found a video that was recommended by Gamers, GVMERS, who made a video describing what happened with Fable Legends. And it was posted a year ago, October of 2023. But if this answers the question, I want to see it. So we're going to do a little bitty reaction to this. I recommend you go check out the video yourself. Links will be in the description of the stream clip so you can give them some support. But we're going to check it out.
Bri donated $9.99
Bri
for super chat.
Thank you.
PSN outage equals fair game dollar publicity stunt?
If it had anything to do with fair game $, I would believe it. But no, I don't think so. I think it was just a crappy, I think they had some bad IT security. It's possible that, oh, now it's just going to loop. I see what that setting did. It's just going to loop it. It's not actually going to clear it. I was hoping it would like read the text longer. Oh, well. I thought I was brilliant fixing the stuff there, but oh, well. Maybe actually that might be why it's doing it, but let me do it this way. We'll try that. Okay. Yeah, it would be funny if they like released fair game $, and then had the outage to just be like, wow, there's so many people trying to play the game. We just can't keep up with it. That would be funny. Okay. Let's see. Thank you for the 10. That's very generous, Bri. Thank you. And that's the other game we got to look forward to is fair game $, man. We're talking about all these other games that are really exciting and look really good. But we're going to get a treat with that and the Horizon multiplayer game. Can you guys just imagine how good the podcast is going to be the day that the Horizon multiplayer live service game launches? Me and Jor trying to talk about that. We'll go in a party. We'll play it on stream. I guarantee you. We'll do it. We'll join a party. Our pings will be horrible because we're so far from each other. But we're going to do it. And it's going to be funny. I guarantee you. Maybe I'll dress up as Aloy or something. We'll do the whole thing. It'll be great. Okay, let's see it. Anyway, refocus. One thing I'm going to do, just so you guys know, is I'm going to increase the amount for text-to-speech to 20 or $19.99, just so you know, okay? That way we don't get the loud interruptions during the reaction unless it's a big old $20 chunk of change. Okay. In which case, interrupt me as much as you want. As much as you want. Okay. Here we go. Lock and load. The $75 million game that killed its studio, the tragedy of Fable Legends. I also want to say it's funny that $75 million in October 2023 was framed as like a catastrophic blunder. Now, that's like chump change. Concord's like, hold my hot sauce, please.
What if we made a game where choice was at the center of the game, where you could get to the end successfully by being ultimately evil or wonderfully good? That would be really unique. That wouldn't be like playing the role of some pre-canned hero. It would be you, a reflection of you. And how fascinating would it be to get to the end of a game and say, gosh, I really didn't realize I'd be that sort of person.
What began as a quirky role-playing game created in part by one of the industry's most notable auteurs would go on to count among Xbox's most important properties. Fable from Lionhead Studios always boasted a certain charm that meshed well with its fascinating characters and awe-inspiring fantastical world. The 2008 sequel Fable 2 arguably represented the series at its best, considering it took home a BAFTA and a slew of well-deserved Game of the Year awards. This moment
I do want to just point out, and they might get to it in the video, but Peter Molyneux, people may not know him because he's not done a lot of stuff now, like recently, but he was like one of the biggest big dogs in the industry for a long time. And he made all these wild promises and all these crazy things. One of the things he said about the original Fable was that you'd be able to like plant an acorn in the ground, and they wanted that acorn to grow into a tree. And then you come back in game, you know, years later, and the tree has grown into this beautiful, beautiful tree. And that kind of was like the vision of it. They wanted it to just be this living, breathing thing where all of your choices had massive consequence. And it didn't end up really being a thing at all. I mean, a lot of the things he promised ended up going absolutely nowhere. One of the other things he did, do you guys remember the Milo demo? Do you guys remember this? It was like from that Kinect era. This Xbox's fake AI. This guy, yeah. This was one of his other projects. It was just like a straight up, it didn't work. But the idea was there was this Kinect experience where there's somebody that is like living inside the console that you talk to.
You have finished your school project.
What happened there is that Claire knew Milo so well, she knew when he was worried about something. His head was down, he wasn't looking at the camera so much, and this is about you meeting a character, a person.
Well, why?
So he's a very eccentric fellow, and he thinks very big picture, typically far ahead of his time. You know, he's got big ideas. The idea of like you plant the acorn, it grows, and is something you see years later in game. That's something you get now, even in games like frickin' Stardew Valley, which of course is like a farming sim, so you'd hope stuff grows in that game. But there's games with consequence that comes back way later, you know, but that wasn't really that doable back in like 2006 or whatever it was. And nowadays with LLMs and stuff, something like Milo, very, very doable. Super durable. I mean, probably uncomfortably doable, where you have an AI that you can talk with, have a conversation with, and you can have it simulate emotions and present it that way with dynamic animations and stuff. There's all sorts of stuff you could do. So in many cases, he's very far beyond his time, but does that lead to the best video games? Not always, because sometimes it means that you're going to end up with a lot of wasted development time and resources trying to create something that the tech just isn't ready for.
This momentum wouldn't culminate in similar praise for Fable 3.
Oh, dude, I remember these decisions. You remember at the end of Fable 3 when you have these opportunities to like who to execute, where to send the money or where to send the food. Like this is a big moment. Big moment. I believe it's at the very, very end of the game and it's like the final choices you're making, but it's been a long time since I played Fable 3.
Yet, no one could have anticipated the third-number title marking the end of Fable as fans had known it for the better part of a decade. A cutesy beat-em-up in Fable Heroes and Fable the Journey's magic-fueled Connect adventure trailed far from the franchise's established status quo. But free-to-play game Fable Legends truly subverted expectations, wearing the guise of a big-budget console and PC experience while missing the mark on what made the mainline installment so appealing. In other words, players craved a proper Fable 4, and the team at Lionhead desperately wanted to deliver as much. In fact, studio leads pitched one such project right before Legends started occupying center stage. The proposal didn't receive so much as a passing interest at Microsoft, its gaming vertical preferring to stick the award-winning single-player studio on a multiplayer-only title just as the games-as-a-service craze got underway.
Imagine that. Imagine a story of a multi-billion-dollar corporation forcing a otherwise talented group of devs to work on something they have no experience in, that they're not even interested in, all in the pursuit of quick and easy profits. Can you imagine? If only something like that had happened elsewhere that we could point to. It's unfortunate that this story has just been told time and time again. Fable Legends was like a full decade before PlayStation got into this era. And it seems like they've course corrected a lot. I mean, they of course have gone and bought out live service studios like Activision to pursue the live service releases and to do that. But I think it's because Phil Spencer and his team learned hard early on that you can't take a single player team and have them make a good live service game. They are different skill sets and the audiences are different. The fans are different. And so if you take a single player studio with single player gaming fans that like narrative stuff and RPGs and that type of thing, and you try to sell those people a live service freemium game, they will not like it, they will not support it, and it will flop. It sounds super simple, because it is, but unfortunately some of these executives have to learn the hard way after wasting hundreds of millions of dollars. They have to learn the hard way, something that they could have learned if they watched a YouTube video from some moron in a basement, but that's just where we are.
This decision begat a host of issues, all of which contributed to Fable Legends' unceremonious cancellation and the untimely closure of the UK development house co-founded by game design luminary Peter Molyneux. This is the tragedy of Fable Legends.
Yeah, what a waste, man.
This video has been brought to you in part by Dungeon Hunter 6.
Oh. It looks like Fable Legends. Why didn't Microsoft just buy this? I would just buy that. That sounds great. Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Founded in 1997 by Peter Molyneux, Tim Rance, Steve Jackson, and Mark Wembley, Lionhead Studios opened up shop with one mission statement: to develop high-quality games while avoiding the trap of expanding more than necessary. Keeping the company's inner circle small didn't translate to the best management standards, though. Former staffer...
I'm sorry, that studio... I've never seen something like that before. They're not even in cubicles. They're on like 4-leaf clover looking desks, and they each sit. There's some people at the end of it, some people in the middle, and the ends. So they're all facing inward towards each other. I've never seen a studio layout like that. That's old Bungie style. It's very weird. I think I would have a panic attack working in an office like that. Like, imagine the guy next to you is really cluttered like this guy seems to be, and it's just trash and paper everywhere. I would unironically turn into Dwight Schrute, where he's got the ruler and he pushes everything to the threshold of the desk. That would be me.
His inner circle small didn't translate to the best management standards, though. Former staffer Charlton Edwards recalled in a Eurogamer interview that Lionhead's early days endured a distinct lack of organization. Yet even without producing...
Hold on, what was the full text? Lack of organization and planning. Quote, they just seemed to be making things up as they went on, but it was a really creative atmosphere. This is something you'll hear with a lot of these like very eccentric, dare I say, visionary developers, is that they don't tend to like a lot of structure. You see it with like how Todd Howard has run BGS, where they don't love to have a lot of, at least in years past, they don't tend to have a lot of bureaucracy filling up the dev cycle. It tends to be a very flat organizational style. That's changed recently as they've grown really big, which seems to be one of the problems. That's something Will Shen talked about in his speech with the other gentleman. I don't recall his name, but they did a speech at a developer conference and talked about how now there's layers and layers of management and approvals and things that things have to go through, which didn't used to be the case. They used to be much more free flowing. It's also something you'll hear about with the development of like the BioShock games under Ken Levine. Very unorganized, stuff restarted all the time. Certain things were being developed and then they'd be cut and restarted. And it just was the free flowing kind of chaotic atmosphere that made those games possible. And they ended up being really, really good, but I think it's not an easy environment or a super professional environment to work on. Naughty Dog also has praised, years past, they praised themselves and talked a lot about how flat they were. So there was not a lot of bureaucracy at play. Everybody was kind of working side by side. Problem with that is that peer pressure became a big thing. So if you were not staying late at the office, you felt like you were failing your buddy, not your boss. Because who cares about your boss? If your boss is upset that you're not working late, oh well, cry me a river. But when you're failing your buddy, because it's very flat, then the peer pressure to stay and work late is much worse. And so it seems like recently they've restructured a lot. And so now there's more producers in place to make sure people are not working too much and all that type of thing. So anyway.
Pinhead's early days endured a distinct lack of organization. Yet even without producers and schedules, the make things up as you go approach served the team well for the creation of its debut title, Black and White, which Electronic Arts published to great acclaim in 2001. Striking gold on the first try constituted a net good, as the crew grew from a headcount of about 30 to 100 within a year of Black and White's release. Molyneux would call the move a big mistake many years later, considering such expansion the very antithesis of what Lionhead initially aimed to accomplish. Still, it was this rapid growth that engendered Lionhead's attainment of the Fable concept. Prior to Black and White's completion, studio co-founder Steve Jackson spearheaded Lionhead's Satellites, a selection of smaller indie outfits cultivated but not owned by Lionhead. Big Blue Box marked one such firm, with two of its co-founders having worked at Molyneux's previous company, Bullfrog Productions, in years past.
Bullfrog,
Upon entering
man.
the Lionhead fold,
That's
the
a
founders in
throwback.
question, Dean and Simon Carter, brought along the idea that matured into Fable. It didn't take long for the ambitious project to find a permanent home either. Microsoft Game Studios felt the original
Dude, the old
Xbox needed an
controls.
RPG, and Fable fit the bill, instantly enthralling the console's co-creator, Ed Fries. From Fries' perspective as a longtime fan, Peter Molyneux's attachment to the project was the biggest draw given his industry cachet. Fries and company also firmly believed the RPG bore the markings of a potential tentpole property. Optimism Lionhead fully realized upon releasing the first two Fable entries to critical and commercial success. Between those two success stories, Microsoft acquired the studio in 2006. French publisher Ubisoft reportedly bid on Lionhead as well. Competition Microsoft couldn't abide lest Fable ended up on PlayStation hardware. According
Can you imagine if Ubisoft was successful and bought Fable? You could be seeing Assassin's Creed, Fable, Tom Clancy, Ghost Recon, Division crossovers. Man, we missed out. Bummer.
According to Microsoft Game Studios' former VP and GM, Shane Kim, the acquisition centered wholly on the Microsoft versus Sony war, and not everyone on Lionhead's staff agreed with the decision to sell. Though considering the failed releases of Black and White 2 and the movies, many later concluded the buyout kept the developer afloat. But others were pleased with the purchase, finding the first-party status beneficial to Lionhead in the grand scheme. The good times lasted for only so long, evidenced by two inflection points that struck the studio in 2012. Early that year, the developer suffered an event that Peter Molyneux dubbed Black Monday, where veterans disillusioned by the company's direction all resigned on the same day. Interestingly enough, it harkened back to late 2005, amid buyout negotiations with Microsoft, when 4 team members left to establish the eventually Sony-owned Media Molecule. Longtime art director John McCormick counted as one pivotal 2012 departure, resigning in large part because Microsoft rejected a Fable 4 pitch.
This is one of the biggest problems with this sort of like rule with an iron fist type of thing that Microsoft and Sony and just a lot of big corporations will do, is that it drives away creative talent hard. I mean, there's that old interview documentary clip from what's the name of the Psychonauts developer? Crap, what's the name of their what is the name of that studio? Double Fine documentary. And it was specifically the interview with Matt Booty when they're all sitting around. Meetings with Matt Booty. Oh yeah, this.
The one thing I saw was the subject about pitches when Booty was like, well, we should have a discussion about that. I think that's fair. And like, he didn't come out and just be like, oh no, you can't do this and we should, you know, we have to.
This was it.
Quit and go run a startup, right?
And they were like, even though they had a nice little handshake agreement, they still ended up having to pay that company.
So if you really want to go run a startup, quit and go run a startup, right?
I mean, when you're telling staff, like, to give you full context, let me rewind a little bit. Sorry, Jacob's gonna have fun editing this one.
2 friends of mine who have released games, and this has happened, and then the thing is, it's like,
And that really is going to boil down to making a game.
it's just that
Right here.
the thing is, it's like corporations like Microsoft always have the advantage. Because I've seen this happen to friends of mine who have released games, and this has happened, and then the company has gone after them, and they were like, even though they had a nice little handshake agreement, they still ended up having to pay that company.
So
To be clear, she's asking about when you're brainstorming for a video game and you throw out ideas. If the company you're working for is owned by Microsoft and that company doesn't use your idea, she's saying we should be able to take that idea and eventually go make our own game or go bring that idea somewhere else. If we want to be an indie dev and make a game with that idea, we should be able to do that and not fear a lawsuit from Microsoft, where Sony, like Microsoft comes in and sues them and takes the company over because they're like, no, you pitched that game idea in our studio that we own, so therefore the studio owns and Microsoft owns that idea. It's a big problem. It's a thing that happens all the time in the entertainment industry, and this is Matt's response to it.
so if you really want to go run a startup, quit and go run a startup, right? And so I'm not trying to chase anybody away. That's not trying to be harsh language. But if you work on something and suddenly it starts to pick up traction and you're like, hey, this thing is going big, I think you've got a choice as a person to make. The reality is that once something is kind of in these walls, Double Fine owns it, right?
I don't wear that.
So this caused a lot of tension within Double Fine because people were like, I'm not going to throw out my best ideas if I'm afraid they're going to be stolen and come back to haunt me later. Because I threw out an idea and then 10 years later I go indie with it and I make my own game with it. And then Microsoft starts suing me into oblivion because they have notes that I pitched that idea years ago. Like, I'm not going to give you my best ideas now. And the problem with Double Fine especially was because just like with Lionhead, before they were bought out, they were an independent studio where developers never had to worry about that. They could throw out the craziest, most wacky creative ideas they could come up with because it was an indie-owned studio. Like, they were independent. They didn't need to worry about the corporate overlords. And now, as you'll see the head of Double Fine mention here in a second, he's like, we've already had a deal with employees for years that they can throw out anything and it's their idea if we don't use it.
Comes to conflict a little bit is where we're doing some Amnesia Fortnite pitch.
Yep.
And we have always, as a company, said that we don't own the ideas until we actually produce them in the Amnesia Fortnite game jam. But before people submit them, they work on them in their own time, on their own computers, and they do, at some point, tell the ideas. And a lot of them don't get selected, and we've always maintained that we don't own those.
yeah, we're going to have to sort through that, because I don't know, someday down the road we might want to go back and say, ha, that was a great idea, you know, we should go make that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is something we have to figure out, 'cause we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that look is worth 1,000 books of words. That tells you everything you need to hear, right? And so this is part of the era of Microsoft that, you know, these documentary clips are taken from, you know, years ago. But it does reflect this same era of Microsoft and the same approach, where Microsoft is a massive multi-trillion-dollar corporation. They are successful because they rule with an iron fist. But creative types are not software engineers. You know, they behave and act differently. And so when these people saw that Microsoft was coming in and was holding them to the same standard as like a software engineer working on a line of code or a series of, you know, different software systems for server infrastructure to manage temperatures of data centers, like, they're different. The guy that's trying to come up with the art style for the new Fable game, he is going to have a different expectation than the software engineer who's like, okay, yeah, my clever idea for how to mitigate temperature loss in data centers. Oh no, it's not my idea. These guys, they're not gonna do that. Wait, is it retroactive? That's what he was saying they have to talk about, because he's like, well, Microsoft bought the studio. Microsoft buys the studio's ideas. And if the studio has ideas that have been put into the studio ethos, zeitgeist, whatever, because it's been spoken, Microsoft should own that. That's what Matt Booty's saying. And so you see mass departures, people quit because they're like, screw this, I don't want this. And you lose a lot of talent. And I believe that's where this story is going to build, is that a lot of the core talent that made Lionhead so good left. And then when Microsoft realized that Fable Legends was a disaster and not going anywhere, there was nothing really to save at that point. So they were like, what are we going to do? Caleb, thank you for the 10. I'll be honest, I'm not too sympathetic to them. They want the stability and benefits, insurance, steady paycheck, etc. of an actual job, but the freedom of being an artist, you can't have it both ways. I mean, with all things, it's a matter of, you know, they can quit. They can leave if they don't like what the new offer is. If the offer under Microsoft's ownership is that, yeah, you throw out your ideas and your pitches and stuff, but we own them the second you say them, they don't have to stay. They can quit and leave and go somewhere else. Nobody's denying that. And if they don't like the idea, I think they should quit and move on. Go to a different studio. My point in bringing this up is that I think you shouldn't be surprised when you rule with an iron fist like this in a creative setting. You shouldn't be surprised when the creativity stops flowing and you start to get really stagnant ideas and people not wanting to take risks and people not wanting to throw out their best, craziest thoughts because they're worried that they're going to be stolen from them later. Like, I think when you're doing a creative thing, you have to treat it differently than other settings. So Microsoft can manage this way, absolutely. And there will be people who take the job and are happy to be working there, but there will be a lot of other artists and talented people that choose not to work there because it's operated this way. And I think the years and years and stuff that we've seen in the industry show that the more free the artists and creative minds are left to be, the better the games tend to be. And therefore, you know, the studio ends up performing better. I think if you try to run a game studio the way that Microsoft runs a software development team, it doesn't work the same. And I think you end up with a lot of wasted time and dev money and all sorts of crap. And I think that, you know, the story of Lionhead is also an example of that. They tried to run a creative, very creative, artsy fartsy studio like it was just another software development team that was working on an update for Windows, and it didn't work out too good. So
Peter Molyneux's exit a few months thereafter especially altered the course of Lionhead's future trajectory. Some ex-staffers said he wanted to pursue the free-to-play social game market that had generated riches for the likes of Zynga. Others believed he'd developed a disdain for Fable, frustrated with being unable to ship anything non-Fable related since 2005. Molyneux himself later admitted that other internal projects were higher on his list of priorities by the time Fable 3 entered the picture. And one specific Molyneux-led endeavor may have laid the foundations for what would someday bear the title Fable Legends.
Uh-oh.
John McCormick envisioned Fable 4 as an Unreal Engine 4-powered adventure with an industrial backdrop, one heavily inspired by late Victorian London. The franchise's fantastical elements would have seeped into the historical period in intriguing ways, with one idea depicting Jack the Ripper in the role of a Balverine, the Fable equivalent of a werewolf-like creature. Microsoft turned down the proposal.
Damn it, Phil! That sounds awesome! Dick, man. Oh. That's... Okay, might not have been Phil. It was probably... whatever, Don Matrick, whatever the hell. But still, come on, Xbox. That sounds like it could have been awesome.
Insisting Lionhead instead steer its focus toward the development of a Fable-branded games-as-a-service title. League of Legends and other popular online-only games at the time had fueled live service mania, fomenting an obsession among publishers eager to create recurring revenue streams. This period was the zeitgeist in which Microsoft reportedly told Lionhead that single-player RPGs and narrative-focused retail games were on their way out. Add that to claims stating the publisher wanted Fable to reach Halo levels of profitability.
It's like having a live service game and wanting it to be your Star Wars. Imagine that. Imagine that.
It made sense that Lionhead allegedly found itself on the receiving end of an unfavorable ultimatum. Either adapt Fable to the service model or close shop. The beleaguered studio dutifully followed its parent company's lead. Conflicting reports tell different versions of the specifics, but many in the know agree. Fable Legends partly spawned from Project Opal, Peter Molyneux's final venture at the company. A village-building sim, Opal bore all the hallmarks of a project trying to satisfy Microsoft's 3 screens on a cloud strategy. An idea built on the basis that phones, PCs, and televisions should share data and services through cloud storage and network connectivity. Molyneux imagined Project Opal benefiting from cloud-based capabilities, wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder. The mobile iteration serviced its resource-building functionality, and the Xbox provided a shooter-centric aspect, tying it all together. One former Lionhead developer categorized...
Hold on. Did I misunderstand that? Or is he saying he wanted to have one game where you do a third of the gameplay on mobile, a third on PC? Like, so they were going to break it all apart.
Iterations wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder, storage, and network connectivity. Molyneux imagined Project Opal benefiting from cloud-based capabilities, wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder. The mobile iteration serviced its resource-building functionality, and the Xbox provided a shooter-centric aspect, tying it all together.
So they were just going to try to build out 3 different games basically at the same time, but they were all the same game and you needed to play them all together like that. Man.
One former Lionhead developer categorized it along the lines of Assassin's Creed meets Fable meets Minecraft meets SimCity. Whether or not the studio could have ever gotten the ambitious build up and running became a matter of great debate. Either way, in Molyneux's absence, Project Opal was supposedly mined for parts to cobble together the building blocks of Fable Legends. Although other ex-Lionhead staffers once claimed Legends originated from a creative day endeavor known as F-Versus, or as some like to think of it, Fable Team Fortress. Project Opal descendant or not, Microsoft greenlit Fable Legends in 2012 with the understanding that it would launch in the form of a free-to-play service title, information purposefully withheld from the public at the time of its unveiling.
I wonder why.
As Lionhead Studios entered its so-named 2.0 era without Molyneux leading the charge, the well-established development house suddenly began wading into unfamiliar territory. Unbeknownst to those involved, such a daring enterprise signaled the beginning of the end for the once fabled studio.
Yeah, you remember these showcases where they would have like the different players standing on different platforms, and it was like, see, they're friends playing, trying to demonstrate that, like, oh, see, it's a shared experience. Now you do this, people, I think you'd immediately get booed. It's funny how people like multiplayer games. People play them. Millions and millions and millions of people play mobile games or play multiplayer games. But when you're trying to sell something to single player games, or when you're trying to sell a multiplayer game to single player gamers, they always try to do it like this for some stupid reason, and it never works. It never ever works. It's like those old Ubisoft demos from like the 2016-17 era where they're doing like a Rainbow Six mission, and then it's like the most fake friendly dialogue. Oh, I see a target up there. You get him? And then Jessica goes, yeah, got him. Never stood a chance. And then they go back to Tom, and Tom's like, oh yeah, well, especially with your loadout. And it's always like weirdly snuck in marketing stuff. It's like, with your loadout and then that cool cosmetic you've got, they never stood a chance. It's like, shut up. Shut up. Nobody thinks this is candid. Everybody knows what you're doing. I don't know what type of room temperature IQ we would have to think that that was real. But please stop. Please. For the love of God.
Unsurprisingly, Lionhead underwent quite a season of change while producing its first post-Molyneux project. The studio culture had to evolve from one centered around an auteur and became more structured in the process. Yet, learning how to build a free-to-play game without past exposure required Herculean effort. Thus, fresh hires joined the crew, including new head of studio John Needham, who'd previously worked on Marvel's Superhero Squad Online, and former mobile game consultant David Eckelberry, who took over as Fable Legends creative director. The outfit eventually narrowed down a core conceit for the would-be online adventure, designing Legends in the style of a 4v1 game, wherein 4 heroes fought off monsters under the thrall of a playable villain. This asymmetrical brawler/RTS hybrid provided the heroes with team-based co-op gameplay and mixed in top-down defense tactics for the lone villain player. But even with Needham and Eckelberry's expertise, Lionhead struggled to break its compelling premise into fun, actionable systems. For example, developers knew Legends demanded a progression system that would feed into an escalating power fantasy. There were disagreements about how said system should function, though, so establishing a few basic rules proved an absolute must. One such rule dictated that levels couldn't sit too high, lest the villain's camera struggle from its bird's-eye perspective. Additional challenges that required roundabout solutions concerned balancing the hero and villain dynamic. Leveling differences between hero and villain characters caused much contention. Same with determining the amount of access heroes should have to health potions under specific circumstances. By the end of 2014, roughly 2 years into development, uncertainty about the game's overall design ethos still lingered.
It never ceases to amaze me how these people can get, like these dev teams can get years and years into a project and still not know how to make it fun, like, or engaging or captivating. It was one of the most interesting things about like the development of Starfield too. I remember seeing that interview where Todd talked about how hard it was to find the fun. What was that interview? Yeah, Starfield proved to be an especially difficult project. Howard previously said that it took 7 years of development to really find the fun in the game, and that he thought he would find the answers faster. Like, it was only in 2022, Starfield's original release year, that the RPG was fun to play, according to the devs. But that's also a thing here where they're like, yeah, we're struggling to find a way to make it, you know, a game that people want to play. It's like you would think that they would start with like a compelling idea. I've seen, Kickstarters where they have a prototype that you download and launch the executable yourself. And it's a prototype that they've built in like a matter of months. And they find a prototype that's fun, and then they build it into a whole game based around that prototype. But with this, it's always amazing to me how you can have these games that are built on the premise of like the end goal, which is live service, money. It'll keep the studio afloat. We'll get lots of players because it's live service and it's got mobile stuff. You all have phones, don't you? You'll love it. And you'll be able to play it anywhere. So it'll be super successful. But they never start, like these disasters never start with just the really compelling gameplay idea that people find captivating to begin with. It always starts with the end goal, or like with the idea of what you want it to be. We want it to be the ultimate space sim, space exploration game. Why is that fun? Like, what's the fun part of it? Because simulation games are not always fun. Like, they can be satisfying, but they're not always fun. So, like, maybe it's not supposed to be fun. No, we want it to be fun. Okay, well then how are we going to do that? I don't know yet. Oh, okay.
Inspiring the hiring of a competitive multiplayer specialist for consultancy purposes. Former developers claim that while the consultant pinpointed various problem areas and offered insight about possible solutions, their advice ultimately went unheeded. Yet Fable Legends' biggest obstacles stemmed from technical woes that impeded development progress at almost every turn. Unreal Engine 4 powered the title, but Lionhead gained access before the engine's completion, meaning developers were often charged with implementing updated versions of the tools while concurrently designing the game. This start and stop affair added months to the production cycle, a time sink further exacerbated by instances of the engine's revised features and bug fixes introducing previously unseen glitches to the mix. Another manner of technical problem manifested whenever Microsoft used Legends as a guinea pig for its latest initiatives. In January 2015, for instance, the company started building the project as Windows 10 and Xbox One friendly. News dictating that Legends would boast cross-platform play functionality.
The devs are like, what? What? What do you mean?
But since Lionhead entered development with a Steam release in mind, this sudden change in plans opened the gateway to potential cheating issues. Microsoft's growing interest in boosting PC graphics and performance with DirectX 12 forced the Fable Legends creators to adjust to yet another technological advancement. The publisher's predilection for showcasing DirectX 12 with Legends demos heightened the pressure too. Reportedly, these types of mid-production additions at least partly contributed to the protracted development cycle. And yet, such corporate-level decisions hardly represented the worst offenses committed against the brand's final hurrah under Lionhead's stewardship.
Dude, it's just so funny because it's like a perfect like exemplification of everything wrong with like big corporate businesses trying to run creative enterprises. It's so funny how just 1-to-1 it all is. It's so funny to me. It's so funny. And also depressing.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Fable was the first game I ever worked on the original Xbox. So I have a ton of excitement about the work that Lionhead's doing to create the new iteration of the franchise. Lionhead Studios is creating...
The Fable Legends reveal took audiences by surprise during Gamescom 2013, due in no small part to the fact that it wasn't the coveted Fable 4. Set amid Albion's Age of Heroes, about 400 years ahead of the first game's events, Legends promised a 4-player cooperative adventure with an asymmetrical multiplayer bent. Fans were intrigued from the outset, albeit skeptical of the integrated cloud functionality that necessitated online-only access. Skepticism ballooned as more information trickled out. Speaking with IGN in the months following the announcement, creative director David Eckelberry insisted the new multiplayer focus wouldn't completely overshadow Fable's usual storytelling element. He went on to tease the game's episodic content model, saying,
God. I know we're in 2025 and time has passed, and maybe in 2013 hearing episodic content model was exciting. But that sounds so horrible It's like, yeah, this game series that you previously played, because it was like sort of an RPG and it was about compelling narratives and characters in this sort of open world setting that was really captivating and compelling. It's like, well, we're going to make it episodic, live service, always online, and asymmetric multiplayer. It's like, you could not have ended farther from where we started if you were trying. It's amazing.
You should expect the experience to unfold in terms of seasons and content, such that its launch would mark Season 1 with new quests and storylines releasing piecemeal as DLC. According to Eckleberry, Lionhead built Legends to adapt and evolve over the course of several years. Eckleberry's comments stopped short of specifying long-term intentions, leaving series faithful to guess at what the studio had in store. Some eagerly awaited additional information, imagining Fable as an MMO light akin to Diablo 3. Meanwhile, more skeptical members of the community remained unconvinced that Legends deserved the Fable branding. This thinking persisted well past the E3 2014 gameplay reveal. Critics who went hands-on with the game shared their uncertainties as well. An IGN reporter wrote of enjoying the villain role, but felt the playable hero characters were less inspired. All in all, Legends provided standard dungeon crawling fare, yet did nothing to play on the franchise's distinct strengths. Even the gorgeous setting of Albion wasted Unreal Engine 4's raw power on compartmentalized dungeon designs. And it didn't help that Eckleberry advised a visit to the Legends website when asked about character backstories, implying such...
He's like, it's not going to take away from the things that the original games did well. We're not taking away from the story, the characters. No, we're not taking away from that. But if you want to find out about them, you need to open up your phone and go to www.fable.com. It's like, so you've taken it away and put it over here. So you've taken it away. No, because we put it over there. Yeah, but you took it away from here, which is where we wanted it. And now it's over there. It's just like amazing. Oh my God. It's so...
Such details wouldn't be communicated in-game, and thus heightening concerns that Lionhead's latest was Fable in name alone. Select players were able to judge the action for themselves when a closed beta test went live in October 2014. Yet, the game remained shrouded in mystery in some respects, with Microsoft finally lifting the veil on its games as a service model in February 2015. The publisher reportedly baked the free-to-play strategy into development very early on, but the public-facing reason for the decision prioritized making the game available to as many players as possible. It was expected that availability across PC and Xbox One would arrive by the end of 2015. Instead, that December brought news of the open beta's postponement to 2016. An official statement from Lionhead claimed that while the game progressed nicely, the delay came as a result of the developers believing they could make it even better. Unfortunately, they never got the opportunity to guide Fable Legends to its fullest potential.
Oh, God.
Sadly, this week is starting off on the wrong foot. Fable Legends and Project Knoxville have been canned, and Microsoft is possibly closing Fable developer Lionhead Studios and officially shuttering Press Play Studios. On the big shakeup, Microsoft said, "We have nothing but heartfelt thanks for the members of Lionhead."
Oops.
On March 7, 2016, Microsoft announced the cancellation of Fable Legends and the imminent closure of Lionhead. The official Xbox Wire statement from Microsoft Studios Europe, which also publicized the closure of Project Knoxville developer Press Play Studios, said the changes would allow the gaming division to focus its investment and development on the games and franchises that fans found most exciting. The unexpected news left the affected companies reeling. Lionhead staff, in particular, had no idea why everything fell apart so suddenly. Yet former employees who spoke with Eurogamer anonymously pointed out a few possible motivating factors behind Fable Legends' failure.
I'm guessing that nobody wanted to play it. That might be part of it. Might be a little part of it.
One source placed the blame on mismanagement, claiming those involved with the day-to-day knew full well that Legends lacked both a fun factor and quintessential free-to-play features. Others argued the fault lay at the feet of Microsoft's free-to-play mandate, especially since core gamers distrusted the model and felt burned in the past by microtransactions. Worse still, the publisher had overfunded the project. One of Lionhead's ex-higher-ups estimated the budget sat in the $75 million range,
Jesus.
far too costly of an investment in the free-to-play scene. Similar service games were often made cheaply and released in an early state, then iterated on while simultaneously expanding the player base. On the contrary, Microsoft pictured Fable Legends as a flagship title, aimed at being bigger and more polished at release. From the outside looking in, it flew too close to the sun. In addition, those in the know maintain that most developers harbored little in the way of love for Fable Legends. Like the user base, Lionhead employees would have preferred Microsoft's investment in Fable 4. Sour feelings didn't prevent a small group of Legends alum from trying to salvage the multiplayer endeavor, though. After production ceased, core crew members banded together for Project Phoenix, an attempt at completing and shipping Fable Legends under a new studio banner that licensed the IP from Microsoft. The hope was that Project Phoenix would safeguard numerous jobs and revive Lionhead's final Fable adventure. Thanks to interest from 2 Chinese companies, the plan nearly became reality. Negotiations lasted for too long, though. By the time former developers outside of the core team caught wind of Project Phoenix, most had already landed on their feet elsewhere. One person explained that while Microsoft supported the idea, those involved simply ran out of time. And perhaps Fable Legends' failings can be best illustrated by the notion of bad timing. Announced during a fragile period for Xbox when Xbox One's marketing blunders were still making waves, a Fable-themed live service hardly stood a chance. The premise practically oozed potential, but Microsoft's supposed technology-driven mandate and overly bullish live service approach seemingly left little room for the charm of Fable to shine through. A glimmer of hope peeks over the horizon, however. Microsoft has handed over the keys to the kingdom, throwing its weight behind a brand new Fable from Forza Horizon studio Playground Games. Xbox marketing boss Aaron Greenberg called the Playground-developed title a fresh start, promising fans a role-playing game through and through. While a traditional Fable, if done right, could inject the beleaguered IP with a fresh burst of energy, it's a shame that Lionhead's own vision for a fresh start was dismissed in favor of an online-focused experiment that never made it beyond the beta phase.
Really is remarkable. I think it's a series of mismanagement. I mean, obviously they pitched Fable 4, that was shut down, and so a lot of the core team from Fable was so frustrated that they left in 2012, and then, you know, Fable Legends just floundered for 4 years. So, you know, it's not a surprising outcome. But what I just find so fascinating is that it is another one of these stories of just years and tens of millions of dollars wasted on a live service game that nobody wanted. Like, from the outset, you could have asked any average, like, Fable fan, is this something you'd connect with? And they would have been like, hell no. Give me anything else. Give me Fable 4. That's what I actually want. I don't want a live service asymmetric multiplayer game that's episodic and filled with microtransactions. No, stop it. But, you know, unfortunately, these corporations typically have to learn the lesson the hard way. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I guess that wasn't a good idea. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Imagine not asking players what they want. Well, what they do is they hire consultants. You remember the guy that they showed? Where is he? Where is that fella? This guy. They hire a consultant who comes in. Yeah, this guy. The consultant who has worked on very successful mobile games. And they hire him to basically tell them what they want, that multiplayer games are the future, this will make tons of money, and then he helps provide feedback on it to make it more like a mobile game. But again, it's all built on the premise that, for one, Fable fans will connect with it. And I think that this is also another piece of it. When you're making an IP in an established franchise, I understand why some would think that it starts the race a lap ahead, right? Because, oh, it's got name recognition. It's in an established franchise that has a fan base. Even if not everybody in the fan base comes over to play it, we're still starting ahead of a brand new IP that nobody's heard of, right? So the idea is that you make it as part of an established franchise and you start the race with an advantage. But I think what is often missed is that gaming as a hobby is very easily influenced by like peer pressure and by sentiments and things. And when you have an established franchise that's known for one thing, narrative RPGs, and then you try to make a live service asymmetric multiplayer game that's episodic, that fan base will hate on it. They will swarm it, downvote it. They will complain about it. They will rage about it. They'll make videos about it. They'll make streams about it. They're not happy, and they will let you know. And in gaming, nobody wants to be playing the uncool game. Like, nobody. Everybody wants to be on what's popular, on what's cool, on what their friends want to play. Especially with multiplayer games, they want to be playing the multiplayer games that their friends want to play. And their friends don't want to be playing a game that nobody else wants to play. So it just creates this self-fulfilling circular thing where it's like nobody wants to play Concord because everybody jokes about how terrible Concord is. But Concord's terrible because nobody plays it, and some other stuff. But, it just creates this cycle where it's like doesn't get players, so the game is worse, and then the game is even worse, so even fewer players come out to play it, and before long it's just spiraled down into the drain. And with this, I think with so many of these live service games with established IP as the founding part, it misses one of the core problems with it, which is that the core fan base may revolt, and actually, instead of you starting the race ahead, you might start significantly behind, because every time there's a trailer, every time there's an announcement, anytime there's anything like that, you're getting mass downvoted. The comment section is filled with negativity, which is not something you want on your live service game when you want people to get hyped for it. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work as smoothly as they think. And a lot of these companies have to learn the hard way. But you see it even now. I mean, even now, Sony, with some of their live service announcements and stuff, if they start their showcases with it, you see the videos mass downvoted. You see the entire PlayStation showcase downvoted if they spend a lot of time talking about Concord or Fair Game $, because the players don't want it. And so even if the game is like relatively good, it's starting behind because people start with the prejudice against it. It just is what it is. Obviously, Larian needs to make a 5v5 hero shooter, Luke. I mean, if they were owned by Microsoft circa 2014, they probably would have been assigned to make a live service game. Or if they were owned by PlayStation 3 years ago, they probably would have been assigned to do that. Let me catch up on these real quick. Cured Madness, thank you for the 5. Speaking of Fable and their old killed studio, did you ever play the God game Black and White? I did not, but I've heard about it and seen little mentions of it and stuff, but I've never actually played it myself. I read Caleb's $10 super chat again. Very generous. Thank you, my friend. Duff, thank you for the 5. Disney animators used to draw lewd versions of characters in retaliation to Disney because they own literally everything they drew. Yeah, I do remember seeing I think it was a TikTok maybe about that, and how they have like a whole archive of horrifyingly graphic drawings of Disney characters through the years. Yeah, I find it funny they keep them. Jack, thank you for the 5. All the best game devs leaking are, or I can't read it. All the best game devs are leaving these live service games to start their own studios, accidentally decentralizing talent from the big corporations. Yeah. Well, and it's why I said on stream like a month or so ago, I was like, you got to remember, guys, 10 years ago, the biggest studios, like the studios that we all knew were like the best guys in the industry, they were very different. The lay of the land was very different. Nowadays, there's a lot of studios that exist that are releasing some of the most beloved games and highly reviewed games that like either weren't known very well or didn't exist back then. Warhorse didn't exist in, I mean, I don't remember when the Kickstarter technically started, but Warhorse was basically unheard of in 2015, if you go back 10 years. Larian, like they had done some stuff, but like also very, very niche, barely heard of at the time. CDPR, at this point in 2015, they had not released The Witcher 3 yet. They had some trailers out, but The Witcher 3 wasn't even out yet. Their last game was The Witcher 2. Did well enough, but certainly not like, they were not a household name at that point. The studios that were assumed to be like the industry leaders would be probably Naughty Dog, Probably Bethesda Game Studios, Rockstar, you know. So there's some of those that have held through, but in 10 years, there's going to be a lot more studios that right now they might exist. Right now they might be very niche, or maybe they haven't even been founded yet. But in 10 years, there's going to be a whole new era and all new studios and stuff. And that's what makes gaming so exciting, is that in some ways it is a pure meritocracy, especially nowadays with indies and stuff on Steam. If you have a good game that people connect with, it will be popular. Like, it will sell like crazy. It's just about being a good game, you know? The idea that Pal World would end up being one of the biggest games of last year, when prior to that it was basically unheard of, that's crazy. Same with like Helldivers, also very, very niche, and all of a sudden blows into the mainstream. It's just a matter of whether the game is good or not. And I think that's why it's so funny that a lot of these big corporation and like publishers and stuff, why I think it's so funny that so many of them are struggling and freaking out right now, because they can't retain the talent. They can't put out stuff that people are connecting with, and they're just hemorrhaging money. And it's just funny. It's just funny. So anyway, all of that to say, Fable Legends was the quintessential example of how to just butcher a franchise and a dev team and a group of talented people and just blow it. And so now we are at the point where we have a new Fable that is coming, and you know, there's people that are trying to rile it up as part of the culture war debate. Whatever. I if the game ends up being good, I'll be excited, and if it ends up being bad, then we'll deal with that when the time comes. But based on what we've seen, it does seem graphically super impressive, artistically super impressive, but we haven't really seen any like, is that gameplay? Is what we just saw gameplay? We don't even really know. This right here. Like, is this gameplay with the UI turned off? Is that an ability you can pop, or is this part of a cutscene? We don't know, which on one hand is like a good thing that it looks so good you can't tell, but we're talking about a video game, and if we haven't seen gameplay, there's just not much to work with at that point. But they seem to have a really capable cast, and it's striking a very funny and cartoony vibe, very, very dry humor, which is my type of humor. So I'm intrigued. And allegedly it's coming later this year. So we'll see. I'm hoping they showcase a lot more of it in the summer and we see more. Because, I mean, I played Fable 3 way back when, and I really liked it. Really, really liked it. And it's too bad that the franchise has just gone absolutely nowhere for... When was Fable 3? 2010? I think 2010. Yep. 2010. For 15 years, they've done basically nothing. They did that connecting. That's it. It's crazy. Anyway, let's see. Sjord Hendricks, thank you for the membership. Taylor, thank you for the membership at the show-off tier. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Very generous. Seth, thank you for that. 7. Can we do this more often? Watch a documentary and Luke comments on it. I really enjoyed this. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, no, absolutely. We used to do much longer, more regular reactions to stuff. But we just got kind of out of the swing of things. Boop. I'll add that there. Okay. Jez Corden says that was gameplay he's seen from a leak. I do vaguely remember talking about that, where he said that he saw a series of gameplay segments and part of what was shown in the trailer looked like what he saw in the gameplay. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. Caleb, thank you for the 10. It's in r/Xbox, but KCD2 Dev Series... But KCD2 Dev said Series S actually helped them develop for other systems. Thoughts, considering it seems like you've been down on Series S before, not antagonizing, just curious. Oh, no, you're totally fine, Caleb. I have been down on the Series S. One of the things that I actually heard in an interview, I guess we can do this sort of mini news segment. Mini news segment! Mini! Also, I'm going to re-enable text-to-speech for Super Chats 10 and up, okay? We set it to 20 for the reaction, but I've now set it so 10 and up will get text-to-speech. Sorry, seeing Caleb's message reminded me of it, but thank you again for the 10. Very generous. So there was an interview. Maybe I can find the exact one. Let me go here. It was specifically Phil Spencer. Reacting to, I think it was in Destin's interview. I think it was. Let me check the transcript. Hold on. Series S. Boop. Yeah, here it is. Dude, I'm so good at this. Okay, shout out Destin for the interview. Okay, new mini segment. I finally found the thing I wanted to reference, so now we can talk about it. So, your question, Caleb. It's in r/Xbox, but you say the KCD2 devs said that Series S actually helped them develop for other systems. Thoughts, considering it seems like you've been down on the Series S before, not antagonizing, just curious. No, you're absolutely fine. I have kind of been down on it before because I feel like it's held it back. Or AAA, like cross-platform games, it's held it back. But that being said, I think that this is an interesting question because you're right. The dev of, I think it was Vavra actually said that the Series S helped them. Or no, it was Toby. I think Toby mentioned it in an interview. He said that the Series S actually helped them develop for other platforms because they had to get it scalable on that platform. That helped them kind of scale it to other things, which I think is true. If you can get it working on the Series S, you should be able to scale up to more powerful hardware more easily. Because you're always developing for the lowest common denominator. You know, a chain is only as strong as the weakest individual link. So if the Series S is the weakest console you have to develop for, if you've made everything light enough that that link can hold it, if there's bigger chains, you'll still be fine. So to a certain extent, that doesn't surprise me. You know, all of that language is not surprising or shocking, you know, in any way. But it made me think of something else about the Series S I hadn't really considered before. That was from an interview that Destin, friend of the channel, actual friend of the channel, Destin did this interview with Phil Spencer recently, and there's a little snippet of it that I found the most interesting. I think in the whole thing, in the whole however long this interview was. And it has to do with Series S, parity, you know, across different games, making sure all games run on this. But just listen to this, okay? Because it's very interesting. I'm just going to let him say it. I'm muted. Hold on.
Would you ever consider dropping or adjusting the Xbox Series S parity clauses with the Xbox Series X, those sort of requirements? Some developers have brought up difficulty optimizing for the Series S. Can you tell us any more about plans there?
Yeah. Age-old examples would be like Black Myth Wukong claiming that it was like, you know, impossible to get the game running properly on the Series S, so that's why they haven't come. But then other people say that it's an exclusivity thing, so who knows what actually prevented Black Myth from coming to Xbox. But the other more obvious one would be Baldur's Gate 3. They couldn't get the split screen co-op thing working on the Series S, so they got a special variance from Phil to put it out without that feature on. But that required a special variance from the CEO, you know. But other than that, that's always been the standards, that all games have to play on Series S and be the same. They can have different like graphical standards, but the content has to be the same.
Yeah, in a way, I think about it in almost exactly the opposite way right now. With the rise of handheld PCs and even the introduction so far of the Switch 2, as developers, we're building on more device specs, from lower powered, because they're battery powered devices, all the way through things that plug into the wall. I actually think we have a real advantage because we've been targeting S for quite a while. that our games have been built and they're portable across many different specs. So when we look at something like a Steam Deck or a ROG Ally or something, we've got this S version of the games that's more tailored to the device specs of a lot of devices that frankly are getting introduced right now. And I think that helps us. And frankly, the scalability of engines today allows them to scale from ray trace enabled multi-$1,000 graphics card on desktop PCs, all the way through a handheld battery powered device. So for me, S has been helpful in our portfolio. And I'm playing Indiana Jones on the S and it looks great. So like it's definitely capable of playing current generation games in a great way. But most of your games that are going to be out there are going to be supporting these different devices. And the S spec of what it is actually maps pretty well to the devices that we're seeing introduced right now. So I think it actually is an important design point for teams going forward, that kind of power performance mix that you see in the Series S.
I hadn't thought about this. Hadn't considered it. One of the things that's been rumored for a while is that Xbox is going to do some sort of handheld in the next couple of years. There's been patents. There's been speculation. There's been, of course, the obvious no duh that probably makes money. But I hadn't really directly connected in my head the fact that having had the Series S as a requirement for their devs for this whole generation should, in theory, make it much easier to port those games to an Xbox handheld, because you've already had to develop them for the weaker hardware on the Series S. It doesn't deal with the core frustration that many of us have with the Series S, which is that it's held back the level of ambition that devs can have when it comes to the size of worlds, environments. It's basically all just tied to memory at the end of the day, because that's the Series S's main restriction. But it is interesting to think of the Series S in the context of handheld computing devices as being a competitive advantage for Xbox. Because if they do a handheld, they just have to get it performing roughly on the same level as a Series S, which was already roughly the same level as a 1X from years and years ago. So that shouldn't be that impossible to achieve. And sure enough, I can't think of an Xbox Game Pass release I've not been able to get working on like the ROG Ally. The only thing that's struggled a little bit has been Flight Sim 24, but that runs like ass on everything. So I guess that's not really a surprise. But I do think it's interesting to think of that, because if you think of PlayStation doing something other than a Portal, let's say that they come out with like a new PS Vita type of device, and the idea is that it can play PlayStation 5 games. That hardware has to be a hell of a lot more capable and powerful to either run at the same level as a PlayStation 5, or they release it weaker than the PS5, but then devs have to go back and specifically optimize to get it running on that hardware, which maybe they aren't able to do because the game was never intending to do that. So honestly, a really interesting flip of perspective that I hadn't really considered. I still stand by everything I've said with the Series S, because this doesn't change anything. The Series S is still the most, still the weakest console on the market, and therefore, if you're making a game that's got to scale to Xbox and PlayStation, if you're developing for it, it's got to be developed for the lowest common denominator. That still applies, and so I think by definition, the Series S has held back the games that cross-platform devs have been able to make. But in the broader context of the industry, introducing handheld devices, which are becoming more and more popular every year. I mean, it's ever since the Steam Deck and the Switch really popped it off. We're now getting ROG Ally, ROG Ally X, the Legion Go. We're about to get a new Onslaught. There was one revealed at CES that has like an 11-inch screen. It's ridiculous. There's a lot more of these that are coming out, and there will be even more in the coming years. And like we've said at the top, there's a rumored Xbox handheld that's in development that I'm sure he knows about, that he's thinking of, and is probably specifically why he's insisting, nope, Xbox Series S, we need that parity, we need that scalability so that you can buy the Xbox handheld and play all of your Xbox games on the go. I think that's all part of it. So it informs the vision that they have. You don't have to agree with the vision, but at least you can kind of start to see what Phil is going for, which is that they've said for years, play Xbox anywhere, through cloud, through your PC, through your laptop, through your Xbox, and eventually a handheld. And the idea is that if you have the Series S as the lowest common denominator, devs have already done the legwork for years to prepare for that handheld, which I find to be kind of an interesting reversal, because I was struggling to find the upside with the Series S other than a cheaper price point for entry into the lineup. But, you know, which is that is an upside. Don't get me wrong. That's great that more people can play games, but I think that more damage has been done with how much games have been held back. But this could actually be a real competitive advantage for an Xbox handheld if this holds true, which is just an interesting thing I hadn't considered. Phil Spencer, brain blast. Yeah, you guys are saying he looks bad. I actually think Phil looks really good. I think he lost a lot of weight. I saw him at Summer Game Fest back in June. Dude looks like he's lost 40 pounds. He looks like, I think he looks way better than he did even back over the summer. So I think he got that Orange Theory membership, or he got his Peloton, and he's been going crazy. So good for him. Valve is really just that far ahead of the market, I guess. Switch did it first with the handheld console parity, but Valve showed that games don't need tons of optimization to make it work. Well, it's PC games also have been for years very scalable. If you port to PC, you're building in scalability by default. It's the games that were built without the intention of ever going to like PC or other platforms and were developed very specifically for this very specific set of hardware. Those are the ones that you have trouble with. It's like, you know, how the Gamebryo engine that turned into the Creation engine, how it tied the frame rate to the physics sim and to the animation systems. So all of this was tied together because it was supposed to run on consoles primarily, and they didn't think of tying other things to the tick rates from servers and world clocks that you would use for that, for synchronizing players across different geographies and time zones. And so all of a sudden they make a couple changes, introduce multiplayer components to the Creation engine. And if you have higher frame rates, you just move faster. Like the whole thing breaks. It was the big thing in Fallout 76. If you looked down, set all of your graphics settings to the lowest possible, and you got crazy frame rates, your character would physically move through the map faster, because like significantly faster, because they had tied player movement speed to frame rates and tick rates and all this other stuff that they just started steadily breaking because they'd never considered it a problem before. When they were designing the engine originally, they never thought that they would have to worry about tying animation speeds to server tick rates or anything. Like it just was never something you even thought of, which I find really funny. How just something you never thought of ends up coming back to bite you, you know? Elden Ring did that. Elden Ring on PC still stutters like a mofo for me. Like it's for me, it's basically unplayable. I just can't, dude. And it's frustrating because I'd like to play it on the go with the RG Ally or something, but I just can't. It stutters too much. I don't know how people put up with it. Which GPU do you have? 4090. Like everything I've seen is that the more you play it on the same driver set, you're fine. So if you download the drivers and then you play through the game for like 10 hours, you're through most of the difficulty. And the stutters will be resolved because it's mostly compilation, like shader compilation issues and stuff. Is it the Intel CPU problem? No, it's a different thing. I literally quit because of it 15 hours in. Yeah, dude, I just can't. Especially compared to the PS5, it just works better. And like correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Elden Ring still is locked at 60 on PC. It doesn't run faster than that. That's another instance where they tied enemy AI to the frame rate, so certain behaviors only trigger a certain number of frames. And so if you download one of these mods to like uncap the frame rate or just allow it to go to 100 frames or 200 frames, enemy AI starts to break. Like bosses will just stop moving and all sorts of other things start to break down, which is funny. I remember there was one little scandal where a speedrunner had downloaded an uncapped frame rate mod or something, and he got in trouble because all of a sudden,
Karma Moon donated $9.99.
like none of that was
through
affecting
Super Chat.
the
Hey,
attacks
Luke,
weren't
are you
right.
getting a code for Night Rain's closed beta in the next few days? I just got mine, so I was curious. Side note, are you still looking forward to Wilds? I am.
Yes, I am very much looking forward to it. Am I getting a code for Night Rain's closed beta? I honestly don't know. I can't remember if I signed up for the beta. I'm pretty sure I did, because I think we did it like on stream when they announced it and everything. So I'm pretty sure I did. But I haven't checked my spam folder. So I'll have to check the spam folder. Maybe I will, maybe I don't. As of right now, I haven't seen an email, so I don't know if I will get the chance to try it. Either way, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, because people who are trying it, I'm sure we'll have lots of content out about it. As for, and yeah, if you want to team up, like maybe, I don't know if we can actually. I don't know. Maybe we'll do that as a members only stream. We'll do that and then members can join the party and we can play together. That could be cool. Let's see. Are you looking forward to Wilds? I am. Oh, hell yeah, baby. Hell yeah. The second that comes out, I'm gone. You guys won't hear from me for like a month. I'm just warning you. March is going to be quiet. I'm just going to be in a cave playing Monster Hunter. It's going to consume my life. Do you think Rockstar has complained about making GTA 6 work on a Series S? I'm sure. It's been a headache for them because they love their memory. But it also seems like most of Rockstar stuff is typically CPU bound. So that's a different thing. Are you going to get a review code for Monster Hunter Wilds? I mean, we'll have to all pray to the Capcom gods together collectively. Maybe we'll do that as a seance or something. We can do that. Light a bonfire back here. We could do that. Figure something out. If you disable easy anti-cheat and disable core 0 for Elden Ring, then that resolves the stutter. Really? Yeah, I hate the multiplayer stuff anyways, the invasions and stuff, so maybe I just try that. Self-stuttering for some players with many users stating that this combination significantly improved their gameplay experience by reducing frame drops and hitches. However, be aware that disabling EAC means you cannot play online in the game. Interesting. Yeah, maybe I have to try that. I will. Thank you for the recommendation, Sneaku. I will try that because if I can get that working, I wonder if you can disable core 0 on an ROG Ally. I don't actually, because it's an APU. I wonder if that causes problems. I don't know. I'll dig into it. Thank you for the recommendation. That's wonderful. I probably won't be able to get Monster Hunter Wilds at launch because I just bought a house and I'm broke. So I think that, not just broke. Trust me, I know how expensive houses can be.
The Nerdeye Giant donated $9.99
Nerdeye Giant.
Super Chat.
Thank you.
Do you think we will get a State of Play document this week? Also loving KCD2 made it to the second map. Also, is Wilds going to be narrative driven?
I think they've said that it will have a story. I mean, like Monster Hunter in general typically has a story. Like I don't think anybody's planning or rather playing the Monster Hunter games for the story. But I mean there probably is a story, but I don't think it's like anything to write home about would be my expectation. Like Monster Hunter Worlds had a story. Like if you really needed me to try to explain it, I guess I could, but it's like, yeah, you're on an expedition and then you're investigating a bunch of different monsters and then you find some new monsters and you you fight them, and you do more research by killing the monsters, and like that's pretty much the extent of it. But I think they've said that it's like more story driven, but what that means, who knows? Time will tell. Time will tell. Yeah, I just made it to the second map. Oh, dude, that's a big moment when you're like, a whole new world. It's so exciting. Yeah, but anyway, let's be real. Monster Hunter, you're not really playing it for the story, especially because like the story in like I think World was like 40-50 hours to finish the story, and then the end game is like 1,000 hours. It's however long you want it to be, really. But you know, there's a lot of end game content there for you. So I think most people are not playing for the story. Am I playing Avowed? Yeah, I'm reviewing Avowed, but that's all I can say. That's all I can say. Do I think I'll get a review code for AC Shadows? I think so. As hard as I've been on Ubisoft in years past, and as much as I don't like AC Valhalla, they still have been cordial, and they've still invited me to preview events and allowed me to try games and review games. So I would expect probably. Of course, I'm not entitled to it. If they don't want to send one, whatever, cool. But of course, I would love the chance to review it. When is embargo up for Avowed? I don't think I'm allowed to say, but before it launches. Do I think AC Shadows will be successful commercial-wise? I think it will be successful commercial-wise. Is it enough to save Ubisoft from a takeover of some sort from Tencent? I don't think so. Because I think they need like $1 billion game to prevent Tencent from taking them over. And I think that this might be like a $500 million game. Or a $300 million game, or whatever it ends up being. I just don't think it's quite on that level. So, we'll see. Let's see. Did I read that one? Yeah, Rage Quit. Thank you for the membership again. Moonlight, CJ, thank you for that 5. Luke, love your VODs. I don't have the same liking for games as you, but I like the skeptical look that you have on every game you cover. Thank you, my friend, and I'm glad you're here. Let's see. Did I miss any others? We talked about that one. Do you think we get a new State of Play announcement this week? Honestly, like, I know the rumor's been that it would happen on Valentine's Day. I think if there's going to be like, you know, some sort of State of Play by the end of the week, we probably hear about it tomorrow. And if we don't, then I'd be very surprised. Typically they give a couple days notice. Maybe they do a last minute thing like tomorrow, State of Play. But I think you'd start to hear it leaking much more than like the rumors we have now. But as of right now, we just don't know. We just don't know. But I think they should have some showcase soon, because they've got to showcase the Horizon multiplayer game. They have to showcase marathon gameplay at some point earlier this year, because they're going to do player tests and stuff. And then they also have Fair Game $. So they've got stuff to show. They just have to choose when to show it. So time will tell. But probably by the end of February, I think we see something. Can you say if going into Avowed after KCD2 is still a good RPG, or will it be very tame compared to KCD2? I can't answer that, unfortunately, because then I'd be talking about Avowed specifically. So can't talk about that. But after embargo, I'd be happy to answer that question. IRXZ11, thank you for the 16 months. Ooh, baby. Loving KCD2 a lot. The only complaint I have is that the boss fights are so anticlimactic when they die in less than a minute with 3 hits, which is disappointing. Yeah, it's part of what I said with like the gear problem. Because the game is so tied to gear and what weapons you have and stuff like that. If you've done your homework and side quests and you're really well equipped and loaded out, there's moments like towards the end of the game especially where there's big fights where this is supposed to be like the big climactic thing. And it's just not. Like, you know that thing where they have the cutscene that plays after a boss fight, and in the cutscene, the player character's swinging the sword like his life depends on it. But for you just like casually walked up and cling, clang, cling, clang, dead. And then the cutscene plays, but you don't feel like that at all. That's a lot of the boss fights towards the end of KCD 2 if you've been doing the side quests. I'm sure if you skipped that and you were just doing main story stuff, it probably is a really tough boss fight because you don't have the equipment for it. But if you've done the side stuff, it can get to the point where it's just really, really easy and straightforward. Which, you know, maybe that's a feature, but to me it was frustrating while I played it. I kind of wish there's a little bit more challenge, but I'm sure we're going to also see them crank it with like DLC and different things like that. Kingdom Hearts 4 possibilities. It's about time. I mean, they should have something if they're going to make one. I think Kingdom Hearts 3 was successful. I've never been big into Kingdom Hearts. I just haven't. My college roommates grew up playing them and loved them. And so when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, they played it and I tried it too. I was thoroughly confused because I had no idea what was happening. I was like, why is Mickey Mouse wearing a trench coat? What is happening? We have to stop Xandor from coming and killing everybody. I was so confused. But they, at least my college roommates, they were thoroughly let down by it, as I recall, because they went into it thinking it was going to be like the wrap-up story where everything resolves after, you know, these years of playing the games and the spin-offs and all this stuff, and then it just sets up like another trilogy. And I think a lot of people were, or at least a lot of people I knew that played it were kind of like, oh, I thought this was like the game that was going to give us answers and wrap stuff up. And then you do a new spin-off. That's fine. But like, I thought this one would at least tie up these knots, but they just didn't. So who knows? But that's kind of the extent of my knowledge of it. Do you think they'll touch anything touch anything in Black Flag's story? I didn't play the original and I'm dying for the remake since I like anything with pirates. I think they don't touch much of anything with it, but I do expect it to freak out some of the anti-woke guys who haven't played video games before.
Super Chat. Did you see the Hidden One video about debunking all the misinformation for AC Shadows?
I have not seen that video, but that could be a cool reaction for us to do, especially if there is confusion over some of it. That could be really cool. That could be baller. Hidden Ones. Do 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 do. You are being lied to.
The pieces of
this one.
Mahatma Gandhi.
We need to talk about what's going on with AC Shadows discourse now. A majority of it is straight up disinformation or misinformation, engagement farming, and unnecessary nitpicking. There are real concerns and criticisms to be had with this game, but those are being overshadowed by blatant rage bait. Yeah, a lot of the time, especially because you also will see people who are like, I think you see a lot of people who just don't play games. It's why I said, like, with the Black Flag discourse, when they announced the remake and then people play it and like, you remember what was the name of the character? Oh, I can't remember the name of the character. James.
Wouldn't you prefer meeting in a pub?
I came to Kingston chasing a target. Getting pissed ain't a priority.
We could work together on this, you know. It's Lawrence Prince you're after. I want his prisoner.
We're after the Sage as well, Edward. Careful who you cross.
May the best man win.
There's guards patrolling that property from end to end. Looks to me like they use bells to signal trouble. See there? We'll want to disable those before pushing too far. With so many men about, we can't rely on stealth alone, so I'll do what I can to distract and draw their attention, giving you a chance to cut them down. Ready?
Oh, woman.
Your name's not James, is it?
Not most days.
For people that have never played Assassin's Creed Black Flag, this is going to be like the most hilarious thing, because they're going to show the trailer and then you're going to see James and people are going to be like, clearly, oh God, here we go. They took a male pirate and they cast a woman to play. And you're going to be able to tell so quickly that these people have never played these games before and have no idea what they're talking about. So just buckle up. It's going to be funny. Okay. It's going to be really funny. It's going to be the most clear cut, like you just outed yourself thing ever. Okay. So just buckle up. Just buckle up. Oh, it's going to be stupid. I'm not ready for it, man. I don't have the strength. I just don't have the strength. Oh man. But it's going to be funny. It's going to be real funny. Okay. Where? Oh yeah, you're right. Jor did comment on it. This is gonna be good. Yeah, I think this could be an interesting video. He posted it yesterday. I don't want to step on his views, so I'll keep this open and maybe we go back to it Wednesday or Friday. I just don't want to I don't want to cannibalize any views, because if I do a reaction to something AC related, it probably does like 80 to 100,000 views on the stream clips. And I'd rather he gets the chance to get those views first. So I'll keep this tab open and maybe we revisit it in a couple days so he has a chance to so he gets a chance to get those. Asmongold him. Is that a verb now to just to react to a video and just eat up the views? No, I don't. My typical approach is if it's like a big thing where it's like IGN or GameSpot or something, like it's a big company. Who cares? Like they'll get views if they need views and we'll do that. But for individual creators, I try to give them breathing room. Okay. I read somewhere that AC Black Flag was greenlit because they have resources from the Skull and Bones engine. Is it on that or Anvil? So Skull and Bones was built. Skull and Bones was built with Anvil Next. Anvil is the same engine as Assassin's Creed. And Assassin's Creed Shadows is the first game to release fully built with Anvil Next. Black Flag was originally built with just Anvil, the OG version going back to 2014. And then, it was like things got shifted and moved around. But Black Flag will be probably the second game ever to release with that new overhauled version of the engine. So that's my expectation. It's why I said in that video I did that Black Flag Remake could actually be like a significant upgrade, even in integrating like weather systems and stuff from Shadows and stuff they had there. But time will tell. Don't want to get the hopes up too much. So Maya, thank you for that one. Hidden Ones is a fan of your channel. I've seen him here. Just ask for permission. You can react later this week, I guess. I'm sure he won't mind. Yeah, no, and that's part of it is I'm like, I want him to get a chance to get the views. And of course, we always link off to the videos we react to, and hopefully a lot of people that watch the reaction to it will go and watch his video and like it and sub and stuff. So I always try to give it the shout outs and stuff, but I don't want to step on his toes if he's not comfortable with it, because there's always like a weird power disparity too, where it's like, if a big YouTuber or a YouTuber that's reaction gets a lot of views, if they're watching your video, you don't want to be like, no, don't watch my videos. Don't react to it. Because the exposure is nice. It can help. if it's been long enough for your video to perform. Like after 3 days, the vast, vast, vast majority of your views for the vast, vast, vast majority of videos are there and established. There's some videos and some types of content and some creators that have long tails, and their video will do really well over months or years. But on the whole, typically, after the first few days, the spike is hit and then it trails off. In which case, then it's like, we'll check it out. You know, because I don't think I'm stepping on your toes. And if anything, maybe we can ignite another wave. But we'll see. But does that kind of make sense why they prioritized Black Flag or AC Black Flag first, right? Since they basically have the assets. Yeah, I mean, what they are thinking is that they had a team build Black Flag. Black Flag was a bit of a mess. And so now they're like, instead of just letting all that work go to waste, let's do Black Flag remake. We'll reuse a lot of those assets and a lot of the tools and stuff we built for Skull and Bones, and then we can make a Black Flag remake way easier and cheaper, and capitalize on nostalgia and stuff. And that seems like an easy dub. Do you plan on checking out Pirate Yakuza? Yes I do. Yeah. I don't know if I'll have the chance to do like a full review or anything. Especially because I think it might be one of those games that I keep for myself. My audience doesn't tend to find those types of games, the Yakuza games, super compelling. I've covered them before and talked about them before, but they just, you know, my audience I think is more Western than Eastern, if that makes sense. So it's why, like, I love Metaphor Refantasio. It's my game of the year 2024, but didn't really make like many videos on it on the live channel. I don't think we made one on the main channel beyond the game of the year video. It's just because my audience doesn't really react well or connect with JRPGs for whatever reason. So every once in a while there will be a game that I really like that I just keep kind of to myself and I play it in my free time, and I don't bother like obsessing over making content for it. I just enjoy it, you know? Because when you're trying to play a game because you know you've got to review it or you know you've got to talk about it and you got to make videos on it, it can sometimes suck the fun out of it a little bit. Because instead of just playing, you're like writing notes and you're typing stuff and then you're making sure you're recording. It can kind of suck the fun out of it. Whereas if I'm just there to enjoy it, I can just enjoy it, you know? Sumai, I've seen Dark Viper AU and Linus discussions of ethics of reacting, real informative stuff. Yeah, no, I think it's to a certain extent, it's always tricky because you want to make sure that they have the chance to perform and you don't step on their toes. But it's also like if you are a creator and your audience just frankly wants to see your reaction to something, like, I don't think you should necessarily feel bad about having an audience that wants to see your specific reaction to something. Like if there is somebody that does a video that's trying to like express their thoughts on a game, and then you reacting to their thoughts of the game does 2 to 3 times the views, or you breaking down why they're wrong about this or that, I don't think you should feel bad for that, because it's like you have an audience that wants to hear your thoughts on something. They would rather hear your thoughts on it compared to the original person's thoughts uncountered. You know, like one of my favorite things that I watch in my free time that just gives me joy. Are these like flat earth debunks, or like we did the one on Terrence Howard from Professor Dave, you know, we looked at this one because he's like 1 × 1 = 2. Because the frequency of the universe is whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I don't want to watch Terrence Howard on a podcast explain his nonsense, but I do want to watch somebody like Professor Dave explain how freaking wrong he is and kind of make fun of him while he's doing it. Or like, you know, flat earthers having a meltdown because a bunch of flat earthers went and got invited by a millionaire from Colorado, actually, to go down to Antarctica and observe the 24-hour sun, which shouldn't be possible on a flat Earth. And sure enough, in Antarctica, there is a 24-hour sun. So you just have video of a bunch of flat earthers realizing everything they believe is wrong, and it's really funny. And so I watch that. I don't really want to watch flat earth videos, but I do want to watch people breaking down the flat earth stuff and making fun of it and exposing how ridiculous it is. So that's an example of like where the reaction actually, I think, transforms and enhances the content to the point where it's actually watchable. Because I can't watch some of those original videos without face palming myself into oblivion, but I will watch a reaction to it, and it makes it more palatable. What's Terrence Howard's math called? Teratometry or something egotistical. Teriology. Yeah. Terry Howard, his math is called teriology. It's so stupid. Thank you for that super chat. Which studio will go under first? Ubisoft, Rocksteady, or Insomniac? Jeez. Well, go under meaning like bankrupt and shut down. I think the only one that stands a chance of actually being shut down would be Rocksteady, because they just don't really have anything going right now. They apparently are working on like pitches, and they're probably working on some Batman thing that's years and years away, but I think they stand a chance. Ubisoft doesn't go bankrupt. I think Ubisoft goes, and if they get to a point where they're close to that, they just have Tencent come in and give them cash. You got to remember, Ubisoft has like the rich uncle who can bail them out of any trouble they get into because it's Tencent. Like, so they aren't really at risk of that stuff. As for Insomniac, I'm not sure why you think Insomniac would go under. They seem to be doing fine. They had a data breach, but I don't think that would really affect it. The Spider-Man 2 PC port was somebody else, so that wasn't them. So I'm not sure why they would be in trouble. Looks hot in there, man. No, it's actually quite comfy. It's actually 69 giggity degrees, and it's quite comfy because we have a new mini split just outside of camera range. So now I get to just maintain exactly the temperature I want through the whole stream. It's fantastic. Wonder Woman, yeah, Monolith might be in serious trouble. Using his math, I wonder how much money he lost when he lost the Marvel gig. Trillions of dollars. Man. Yeah. Oh, man. What a crazy person. Better than the old studio, though. Yeah, dude, the old studio used to, no joke, get to be like 85, 88, 89 degrees. One day, I think it got to 91 in the studio while I was trying to film stuff. It was crazy because it was a tiny room. It wasn't properly ventilated or insulated and stuff. It was like an owner special flip. So it was a mess. And yeah, this now, oh baby. And wait till you guys see the new studio too. She nice. She'll treat me right. It's a good bit bigger too. Like, it's probably 1.5, 2 times the size of this room, just on the other side of this wall. It's nice. You actually got me to get a water bottle like yours, lol, and it's one of the best purchases I've ever made. Dude, for real. It's so great. Once you do it, you'll never want to go back. Do you think Sucker Punch will continue to make a new IP, or could you see them returning to Infamous? Probably a new IP. One thing we've heard from, I think it was Hiroki Totoki, the new CEO of like Sony. He said that they want more IP. He said that they think they could use more franchises, which if the CEO thinks you need to come up with new ideas, then that's what you're going to do. He's not going to greenlight the other stuff. You know. Let's see. Sumaya says, I already pre-ordered Pirate, Yakuza, and AC Shadows on Steam. I can refund if they gonna suck, but I have faith they are gonna be worth the time. I mean, yeah, I guess you can cancel it if the reviews turn out bad. So either way, I guess you're covered. My typical recommendation is the only thing you should ever consider pre-ordering would be collector's editions if you want the statue. Because if you wait till reviews, you won't be able to get a statue. Like, you just won't. So if you like the statue and if you like the artwork of the statue, then I'm like, yeah, you're pre-ordering a statue basically at that point. But as for just the regular games, I typically say just don't. But I do understand not everybody has good internet speeds, so you have to pre-download, and there's other stuff. You don't want to wait 2 days to play the game. So I get it. That's not always that simple, but yeah, either way, you have an out if the reviews are bad. Super Sagittarius, do you need to play the first KCD before the second? No, if you watch a story recap, you'll be fine, but you need to watch a story recap. A lot of people try to just go straight into the second one, and they do some story recap stuff to help. Play it safe. Just watch a story recap. But you don't need to play the first one. I think you could, and it'll make you appreciate the improvements they made in the second one. But you don't need to. So if you want to jump straight into the second one, you can. But you could also start with the first. You have the option. But regardless, you should know what happened in the first game before you play the second. Where was I? How do you feel about the first Berserker Kazan? What's that joke where they were on, I think it was Impractical Jokers, where they had Joe, he had to pretend to be a like nuclear physicist or something, and they asked him, what's your opinion on Planck's constant? And he had no idea what they were talking about, so he's just like, yeah, I can take it or leave it. It's just like, that doesn't even mean anything. That was my first reaction to the first Berserker. But no, I do know of that game. I've seen the like trailers and stuff, and I'm intrigued. I don't know much about it. I haven't really dug into it much, but I'm intrigued. So we'll keep an eye on it. Don't have much to say about it though, unfortunately. I don't have much to go on. Kyle, thank you for the 5. Playing KCD2 is making me sad because every other RPG I ever play will never be as good. It's the danger with really good games, is that they taint your, for lack of a better term, tastes. You know, it's a good sentence when you use taint and taste in the same sense. But no, I mean, it'll never be the same. It'll never be the same. Yeah. It's the same thing with like Red Dead or with Baldur's Gate 3. Like, once you've tried Baldur's Gate 3 as an RPG, you're like, I'm never going to have anything quite as good as this. Luke, send help. My horse won't sprint anymore in KCD2. Am I a newbie to this franchise? And I am a newbie. Any tips? Your horse isn't sprinting anymore? Do you have a lot of stuff in the horse's inventory? Is the horse's inventory loaded up? Like, do you have a ton? You know, when you're in your inventory and it's like, send a horse, you can load it up with stuff. I'm guessing that's what it is, if you just have him loaded up with a bunch of armor and heavy stuff. So I would just go in, clear out some stuff, take it to your stash, dump it there. Yeah. Lucy, yeah. KCD2, Baldur's Gate 3 did the same thing. That game still captivates me after 600 hours. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's it, W. Luke. Yeah. No, hopefully that works for you. Hopefully. That's what it makes me think of if he's not sprinting anymore. Real quick, Andrea Pessino, co-founder of Ready at Dawn, the guys that made Order 1886, explained why I never got a sequel. It wouldn't have been, or I can't read. It would have been an incredible sequel. We pitched the sequel to Sony, in fact, regardless of all this stuff, development issues. In a way, it was better that they passed, because if we thought we were going to be screwed before, man, with the sequel, we would have signed our life away. We were going to do it just because we wanted to deliver it to the players. He also mentions that the mock reviews for the Order internally did not reflect the critical reception afterwards. It was way higher. We're not talking Last of Us higher. We're talking, mid 70s. That's what we were getting. Interesting. Internal reviews were in the 70s. If you don't know, Order 1886, Metacritic, The Order 18, there it is, 1886. It landed in this like low 60s. And part of it, you got to remember when it came out, February of 2015. One of the old school ways of seeing what the standards were like way back when, this is actually a trick I've used before. Okay, let me see if it works this time. I go back and I look up old school Boogie videos, because Boogie, before he lost his mind and faked a bunch of stuff, it's a whole story. Before all of that, Boogie was like one of the main gaming YouTubers on the platform. So if you want to see like what the most popular position was, because this is also something Boogie got in trouble for later, was that he always just kind of took the middle of the road position that was most popular, because he didn't want to rock the boat or upset anybody. And so if you ever want to see what like the pop culture most popular position was at the time, you can look up a game or a topic and see what Boogie said about it way back when.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? So much I agreed to be part of their promotional video. You may have seen that at your local GameStop. This game is currently mired in controversy, though, that's kind of derailed the entire thing, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today. A fellow YouTuber with the account name Play Me Through uploaded a complete playthrough of the game, and this playthrough lasted right about 5 hours. On a Reddit thread, he said that the game took him right around 5 hours to beat, that in the end he did not feel that it had much replayability, that there was no new game plus, and that overall the game was relatively short. The developers of the game have debunked this theory. They said that the game can be very quickly played through if you don't choose to explore, if you don't do any of the side stuff, if you don't try to find any of the hidden stuff, and you just focus on beating the game, you can do it quickly, but they would not give an actual number of hours. But they said 5 hours would really be pushing it. Now, 2 other PlayStation players who've gotten early access to this game have actually backed up that claim. NeoGaffer Veranda said it took him about 10 hours to beat the game. And another PlayStation user by the name of W. McHale, well, you can read all about his story here below, but he says it should take you about 9 or 10 hours to beat the game as well. We just won't know how long this game is until Friday when it's released to the general public, and reviewers are allowed to say how long the game actually is. And when you and I get a chance to sit down and play it, chances are it's probably going to last about 10 hours, but whether it's 5 hours or 10 hours, I want to talk to you about how I feel about short games, and I want to see what you think as well. Now,
so the whole scandal was that the game was way too short for what it was. It was graphically really impressive. Gameplay wasn't super deep, but it was really, really short. My bigger frustration with The Order 1886 is that it was so clearly set up for a sequel, and it ends on this weird, like, kind of cliffhanger thing. It's just frustrating that it doesn't go anywhere and there was nothing more. So it's a game you play and it's short, but it's not like a satisfying short. It's really frustrating. But I think it had a lot of potential. But as you can see, like with this video at 378,000 views, a video like that from 9 years ago, like 2015, that's like, you know, a gaming news roundup video today doing 600, 700,000. You know, that's a big video. And that was, you know, part of what influenced a lot of people's perspective on it too.
Samaya Gold donated 1,000 rupees through Super Chat.
Thank you.
What's your definition of a RPG? I don't consider RPG acts true RPGs. They mostly have elements of RPGs. Maybe it's a spectrum. Personally, I don't care about multiple choices.
Oh, cut off again. I don't care about multiple choices or different endings, so I couldn't get into Baldur's Gate, but I love a lot of JRPGs. I mean, all the standard really is role-playing game. The problem is that you can bend a lot of games to fit that definition, whether it's an ARPG, and it's like, no, you can choose how you play. You can choose whether you're a strength build or a dex build, or if you are somebody that's all about crit farming or whatever it is. You know, you can play that way. You get to choose your own route. So then if you have any like deep customization in terms of combat, then all of a sudden you're an ARPG. On the flip side, you have narrative RPGs, you have JRPGs, you have CRPGs. I mean, it's a term, like the only reason we have terms for this stuff is because you're trying to quickly and effectively summarize what a game is. Just RPG, I agree, doesn't give you much information to work with and is not really useful. That's why if I'm trying to be precise, which sometimes I'm not as precise as I should be, I think you have to be like, Baldur's Gate 3 is a narrative RPG. It is a massive open world narrative RPG. Like then I think you get the picture, you get the gist of what that is going to be. Same with like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's an open world medieval sim RPG. So, you kind of get the pieces of it. But I think it's just all that if you just go with RPG nowadays, that can mean 15 different things, and it doesn't really tell you much. Like, people say Elden Ring is an RPG. People say that Baldur's Gate 3 is an RPG. People say Skyrim's an RPG. People say Fallout 4 is an RPG. People say Starfield's an RPG. So it can mean pretty much anything, so I agree, you have to be more specific. What's my definition of an RPG? I think just RPG doesn't, as a role-playing game, it doesn't tell you enough. So I think you have to just add on prefixes, to all of it to make it actually mean something. Because just RPG, I think, doesn't tell you enough. It's not detailed enough of a description. But yeah, anyway, the Order 1886 length issue, giggity. It was just very, very short, and it came out at a time when there was this feeling in the industry that games and companies were starting to prioritize cinematics. And I remember 2015, everything was all about like QuickTime events and how sucky those were in games. They were sucking out gameplay and engagement for the sake of basically just being interactive movies, and so that was a big scandal at the time. So it was just like the perfect game at the perfect time to define and exemplify a frustration a lot of gamers had, and it was kind of sacrificed at the altar of that. But it also, I think, was just unacceptably short for the price that it was. It was like a $60 game that was like could be finished in 4.5, 5 hours. I have a problem with it with Order 1886. I had a problem with it with Hellblade 2, which I think might have been 50. I don't remember, but still, I think if a game is that short, you shouldn't be surprised when players feel like it's that short and kind of anticlimactic at the end of it. That's part of it that people find really frustrating. Where was I? Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Jay Moore, thank you for the 5. Do you think medieval games like KCD2 work better as first person? Or do you think you could get away with it like Dragon's Dogma 2, even though KCD2 is more realistic? I think it depends on what it's going for. Like, I'm not opposed to the first person thing inherently. Some people I know really don't like first person. Some people really don't like third person. I don't have a strong preference either way. Like, I don't think that Indiana Jones was ruined by being first person. I don't think that KCD2 is ruined by being first person or anything. And I don't think that they're great because they're first person. But I do think if you're going for things like immersion, first and foremost, first person can have a real benefit. In some cases, there's perks to going first person because you don't have to worry about a lot of more complicated dynamic animations like going upstairs, opening doors, interacting with NPCs. Players nowadays expect seamless transitions between gameplay and cutscenes for AAA games. That's really tough to implement. So if you go first person, that's not as big of a concern. So there's a lot of things like that. There's pros and cons to all of it. I would say for me, I don't think there's a right answer for like what is better. Because I think it just depends on what they're going for. I think if they're going for immersion, first and foremost, first person, probably the best bet. If they're going for something that's more cinematic, more blockbuster, then I think going third person is probably the best bet. Jonathan, thank you for the 5. When's your 3-hour long critique of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 coming out? Dude, don't tempt me. I love those games. When I was on vacation in the Bahamas, in between sessions of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I was playing Planet Coaster, and that's one of my relaxation feel-good games. It's just good, man. It's just good. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 is still the most impressive first-person game. The seamless cutscenes were awesome. I agree. I mean, that's how you should be doing it. That should be the goal, I think. Anyway. Okay. We saw Ubi switch to third-person scenes in Far Cry 6, and it didn't work. Yeah, there's just sometimes there's things that just don't work as well. And, you know, you got to try it to find that out. Unfortunately. Fortunately, sometimes you just have to learn the hard way. But anyway. What else do I have? Anything else? What's your go-to time period in games? Pirates for me. Yeah, I think the Golden Age of Piracy is one that I'd like to see explored more. Victorian England, that also gets me really excited. Anything Victorian England, I'm all in for. I just find the setting fascinating. Don't know why. I just do. Do you think the success of KCD2 Warhorse will continue in that world, or do you think they'll do something new? I won't do any spoilers, but I do think that there is they freed themselves up to do something else if they wanted to. So I personally would hope that they go and experiment with something else, do a pirate game, something like that. So I'm hoping that they try something else. You forgot Ancient Egypt. It's because you have to be more specific, because Ancient Egypt was such a wide period of time. Like the Ptolemaic period, I'm not that into. Just not crazy into it. I think you could do a cool game set like the Age of Ramses. Like I think you could do a game where maybe you set it right after, or maybe right before Ramses II dies, and then you set the game right after he dies and you explore the power struggle. Because you got to remember, Ramses II, he had been king for like 70 years in a time where most people's life expectancy was like 33. So he was the only king that most people and their parents and some of their grandparents had known. He'd been alive through all of them. That would be like having the Queen of England live to be like 250, 300 years old. So like imagine how crazy it would be when he finally dies, and how does the country reel with that? I think you could do a really cool game exploring that period and the instability that followed from it. I'm sure there's just a lot of very fascinating stories that you could explore there. Not much in the historical record about it. Probably thought he was immortal. Yeah, I mean, they already thought he was a god incarnated on Earth. So they thought he was a god, but one of their proofs of it was that he lived to be in his 90s, basically, it seems, based on his mummy and the writings and stuff. And if he was in fact that old, that's crazy. I mean, again, it would be like Trump living to be 300 years old. It's like, what? I wouldn't blame people for at that time thinking that something was really special about him. Let's see, when was Origins set? It was set in the Ptolemaic period, so it was set like right as Egypt was beginning to collapse. So Alexandria's been built, and there's all sorts of political instability in the country. Egypt is, you know, they reminisce about the old days and the great acts of those that came before. They were kind of like a failing country at the time, and then they were just kind of taken over by the Greeks and Romans. So it happened slowly but surely. Yeah, I did see that ballistic paper. Yeah, Valve stepped in and they are banning games that force advertisements on players. So I mean, I think that's good. No more like full page ads in random indie games that are just asset flips. I hope Kingdom Come becomes a franchise kind of like AC, just exploring historical worlds, putting a realistic fictional historical twist to it. I totally agree. I think that they could fill that void very, very well. I 1000% agree. Yeah. You could do a really cool one of those games set. Like imagine a grounded historical Warhorse style game, but even in like World War I. Like you could do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. I'd be so excited to see how they approach those historical stories with their attention to detail and everything. Egypt could be really, really cool as well. Like there's so much opportunity, so much potential. What's your audio settings? My audio sucks. I'm sorry, Jay. Honestly, that is not an easy question to answer because there is a lot going on to make this work. Even my audio thing I have right here is a Go XLR, and they don't sell these anymore. So even if I told you exactly how I had it set up, you couldn't buy one. So it's not that straightforward, unfortunately. Don't have a lot of easy answers with that. But YouTube tutorials all day, every day. If you have questions, look up YouTube tutorials. Thank you for the 2 free range movies. Which should I buy first? Baldur's Gate 2 or KCD 2? Do you mean Baldur's Gate 3? Baldur's Gate 2 might feel a little outdated. But Baldur's Gate 3 or KCD 2? Honestly, I think it just depends on it depends on whether you like real-time gameplay or if you like turn-based stuff. Baldur's Gate, fantastic turn-based game. Kingdom Come, fantastic single-player or first-person real-time game. Just depends on what you like. So whichever seems more intriguing to you, I would jump into that. Jay Moore, thank you for the 5 as well. Do you think Skull and Bones kind of ruined the development of new pirate games to where different companies are hesitant? Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's had no influence. But I mean, then again, I think also the pirate Yakuza game could also be a boon. Maybe that ends up being something where it's like, ooh, pirate games are back. They're cool now. So time will tell. Time will tell. But I do think that that's played a role. But that could flip around because just this year we could have the Yakuza pirate game. Let's say that ends up being really good. That excites people. And then we could also have we've also recently had Sea of Thieves go to PlayStation and sell a ton of copies there and have a ton of players. So that also excited people. And then later this year, we could potentially be getting a Black Flag remake. And let's say that does well. You know, you'd have 2 to 3 games in close succession that are pirate themed that have shown players are interested in the setting. So maybe we get to see more of it. That would be my hope, but I also really want it to be true. So I'm not the most unbiased. Yeah, Baldur's Gate 2 is really good though. True. It just might be a little bit of a system shock, you know. I know you tried to avoid hype. But do you ever get a little hype for GTA 6? It probably depends on what you mean by hyped. Like I fully expect that it's going to be very, very good. I think of it more as like I'm confident that game's going to be wildly impressive and it's going to make every other developer look like they're not even trying because that's just what Rockstar does. So I'm very confident in the quality of GTA 6. I wouldn't say I'm like hyped. Like I'm not. When I think of the term hype, I think of somebody like watching YouTube videos speculating about stuff like, and if we look at this frame in the trailer, you can see that they've got this, and this here. So therefore, we can suspect that we might even see this. And you're not even like, none of that's shown. You're just making stuff up basically and like speculating and getting excited for the sake of getting excited. That's what I think of when I think of hype, is somebody that level of excited. And I don't feel that with that. Now, the next Mafia game, I could get there because I love Mafia. Monster Hunter. Pretty excited for Monster Hunter because I love Monster Hunter. What else is there? I mean, the remake for Black Flag, if it ends up looking really, really good, I could see myself getting really excited for that because I love Black Flag. It was a huge game when I was a teen. So I could see that being a big deal. But it just depends. Just depends on the game. GTA 6, I mean, we've got one trailer, so there's not a whole lot to go off of. You know, not a whole lot. KCD DLC, yeah, I mean, we'll play it when they bring it. But that's, I think, later this year, like late this year, before we get anything like that. So we shall see. We shall see. Okay, fam. Everybody. This has been a wonderful day of streaming, despite the initial hiccup of the inspector coming. But we passed. Once the flooring's in, we get to move the studio and rock and roll that way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the stream here, and I'm going to work on a video that will be coming later this week for something. sure you can decipher what that might be. But I'm going to go work on that. You guys have a tremendous day. Thank you for the outrageously generous day of super chats and memberships and all subs and all sorts of stuff. You guys are crazy. So truly, truly thank you guys. Very, very generous. I will be back on Wednesday. We should be doing the podcast with Joel Raptor again. That will be awesome. We'll hear all about the Japan trip and whether he's got new details. He might even have some info about a PlayStation showcase. It seems he's pretty confident it's coming soon, so we shall see about that. But until next time, my friends, much, much love. I'll see you soon. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.